The much talked about 2019 presidential and National Assembly elections have come and gone, but their memories will linger on for a while. This might not be unconnected with the heat the elections generated, especially when the election management body, the Independent National Electoral Commission, shifted the elections by 1 week due to logistics and operational challenges. However, the February 23 elections were conducted with some challenges such as the malfunctioning of smart card readers, violence, ballot paper snatching, and other electoral violence in some states despite the president's order on perpetrators of these unpatriotic acts. To this end, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, said it will reschedule the elections in Rivers, Anambra, and Lagos states where cases of violence and ballot box snatching were recorded in yesterday's elections. In spite of these few challenges, observers and analysts described the exercise as successful in view of the anxiety it had generated months before the D-Day. So why do some Nigerians still want to perpetuate electoral violence at this electronic age? And why are some people always willing to subvert and cut corners even on issues of national importance? What are some of the challenges noticed in this election, and what is the level of turnout of voters? Does the number of political parties pose a challenge to the voters? These are some of the issues we intend to look at as we continue our analysis on the 2019 presidential election and the National Assembly elections as well. Good to have you again on Nigeria Decides. My name is Fisayo Ogunfuyi. Good morning. Now, as usual, we shall link up with our various network centers for developments on collation of results. I won't be doing this alone. Joining me in the studio to analyze the general elections is Dr. Abiodun Adeniyi. He is the senior lecturer, Department of Mass Communications, Bayes University. Doctor, thank you. Good morning.
Thank you for having me on.
I hope you, participated in the whole process yesterday.
Yes, I did, and it was very exciting.
Yes, you are a patriot indeed.
Thank you very much.
Now, let's, look at the election, first of all, in terms of the sheer size and your expectations. Were many of them met yesterday?
Very well. You definitely be heartened with the enthusiasm, the excitement, and the kind of feeling, the kind of airy feeling that the average Nigerian voter had, coming out to vote yesterday. All the queues that I witnessed, all the streets that I passed through, driving to my own point where I was going to perform my own duty, the queues were very impressive, really. And you could see the eagerness of the average Nigerian citizen to demonstrate his own right, to reaffirm his citizenship and prove that he has a role to play in the election, in the appointment, in the process that leads, to the emergence of his own leader. So it's like taking their destiny into their hands and believing that if you are not part of this process, then you shouldn't be complaining. And let's not forget that the electionary process is also a process whereby citizens' self-esteem, are demonstrated. And it is good to note that the average Nigerian voter is conscious of this, and they are obviously ever ready to play this role, irrespective of the disappointments, irrespective of the downsides, irrespective of the postponement that we had. So it's gratifying, really, that we're at this level in the evolution of our democracy.
Well, I'm a man, but I'm passionate about an aspect of the voting demographic, and that is women voters as well as candidates. A lot of people have said that they should begin to gravitate from just being cheerleaders to chairpersons. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, very well as well. It's the women really belong to a section in terms of social classification. Okay, just the way you classify women is the way you classify. If you're classifying women, you're looking at humans on the basis of sex. You can also classify humans on the basis of income, on the basis of class, on the basis of geography, on the basis of ethnicity or tribe, as it were. So much as we need to give concern to women, we also have to be concerned about other divides as well. But for women, being very significant order, okay, in the social classification, no society grows really by undermining their influence. No system can grow, no nation can function by deliberately undermining their influence. What societies do, what systems do these days, is to encourage all classifications, okay, is to encourage all divides, okay, and it is gratifying to know that, many of our aspirants are beginning to think about them and using them especially to campaign, just in the way in which they will use youths to campaign. There are programs and promises that I've seen, and many of them are highlighting plans, okay, for women, just like in the way they are highlighting plans for youths. So this is good, really. It means that we're being sensitive to all sections of the society. And of course, we cannot propel ourselves to development, we cannot grow if all groups, okay, are not carried along.
Like I told you earlier, we will be joining all, different parts of the country to perhaps do a post-mortem of what happened yesterday. But just talking about women, we have this special report by our own correspondent, Rabi Abdallah, and she's been looking at women's influence, their penetration, and as far as their influence as far as the political process is concerned. Let's hear from Rabi Abdallah.
That gender equality in political participation is a fundamental aspect of modern democratic governance. The expectations, therefore, is that both men and women should have equal rights and opportunities to participate fully in all aspects and at all levels of political processes. In practice, however, women face challenges, and the number of women in leadership and decision-making position abysmally low. Nigeria is not left out in this scenario, as the poor participation of women persists, while the number of those in political position is growing at a slow rate.
It's just the political problem that we're experiencing, the patriarchal society, the cultural society, religious issues, then coming down to finance, and then I take it back to the political parties where they lack internal party democracy. We have the godfathers, the gatekeepers, the financiers of political parties. They decide who will go and who will not go. And so women, because we didn't start early with the men, we have not built our own, class of godmothers who will protect our interest in politics.
Some of the barriers we have seen, first is culture and religion. Culturally, women should be in the home, making food, making babies, and the rest of them. Family pressure as well. When the family is not supportive, the women will try, but without that support, they will not come out. So I think these and some other reasons are part of the things making women's participation in politics to be on that slow pace.
Historical evidence is available to prove that Nigerian women have for long been playing a crucial role in the political life of the country. And this has contributed in no small measure in shaping the political system of the nation. In the Fourth Republic, which started on May 29, 1999, the Nigerian political terrain witnessed an increase in the number of women political appointees, even though they did not perform well at the polls.
So we've got to make concessions. And we're making concessions based on our understanding of what democracy is about. That democracy is about inclusion. Because if you take women out, democracy loses its vitality. The second is on the strength of the value that women bring to the table. Women have a lot to contribute to national development. We've got women who have intellect. We've got women who are resilient. We've got women who have skill. We've got women who have energy. Why are we not tapping into that energy and that resourcefulness that they have or they bring into public governance?
Although Dame Virginia Etiaba became the governor of Anambra State from November 2006 to February 2007 by providence. Significantly, Nigeria has not had an elected female governor, except for female deputy governors who had emerged at various times.
INEC looking at all these variables, now committed to providing a level playing field for both men and women to participate in elections. It started by developing a gender policy to guide it in strengthening women's participation in elections. We developed that policy, INEC gender policy, in 2014 with an implementation strategy.
A peep into the 2019 elections total registered voters shows that registered female voters constitute 47%, while the abysmal low level of female candidacy to the highest position in the country and other elective positions is quite glaring.
If you look at the list released by INEC, we have very poor representation of women candidates. For the House of Reps and the Senate, it's barely about 11 and 12% female candidates. We did analysis of young people running for office, and within the young people, the young females, it's barely 15% of young females within that youth category. And for us, that is worrisome. We have a country where women they are active as voters. Political parties are yet to understand and appreciate the role of women. So if we take it back to the party primaries, because that is where the problem started. At the point of primaries, they had lots of women aspirants. But parties at first, you had high cost of nomination. That first of all cut out women that could not afford to buy those nominations. You also had electoral violence that happened at the point of party primaries. And if you look at all these trends, they impacted negatively on women political participation.
What measures should be put in place to guarantee Nigerian women's active participation in politics?
If we empower more women will come out there. And women in politics presently should also mentor other women.
And we are beginning to see clearly that the 2019 elections will produce a lower percentage of women in parliament. That is obvious. So what we should be talking about now is, having women getting appointments to executive offices. Women are part of the campaigns. Women, they are there to support political parties. And of course, every political party is counting on women to come out to vote for them.
So parties need to adopt some levels of affirmative action. If you look at South Africa, the South African parliament has more women, has a large percentage of women, because the ANC, which is the leading party for one, has a quota system for women that adopts 50%. Also legislation, we still have a challenge with the gender equal opportunity bills. I know there's a bill before the National Assembly currently to promote women participation in elections. Those kinds of legislations help, and it has worked in countries like Senegal, in countries like Kenya. Look at Rwanda. For those countries, they even had that constitutionalized in their constitution. So their new constitutions created spaces for women participation. In Zimbabwe, they have what they call the zebra representation. So if a man is the candidate, the running mate has to be female, and if a woman is a candidate, running mate has to be a male. And those measures are helping to increase women representation in government.
Scholars have pointed out that leadership limits are not genetically required and have absolutely nothing to do with gender. While it has been proven that countries with increased women's participation in politics and leadership positions tend to be more inclusive, egalitarian, and democratic. In Abuja, Rabi Abdullah, NTA News.
All right, just being in sync with the agenda at this point, we have a lady coming in, perhaps to even illuminate our discussion further. I'm talking about none other than Grace Jerry, convener, Access Nigeria campaign. She's an election expert. Of course, she's also executive director of Inclusive Friends Association and Disability Votes Matter. Thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate especially the punctuality. Now, let me start. You saw that from Rabi Abdullah. What are your comments at this time, looking at how things will turn out? The projections are not the very best, especially when you look at what the respondents were saying concerning women in this election?
All right, first, let me thank you for this opportunity once again, and to also congratulate Nigeria for, the election that just happened yesterday. When we look at women representation, when you look at year in, year out, election after election, I think the narrative is almost the same, and to think that it's going to change over time. Instead, what we're realizing, or we're experiencing like a deplorable, state in terms of women, representation. And I was watching all that was happening, talking about, the percentage of women who are, registered voters, over 40% of women. And when you look at, women turnout on election day, it's always higher. The margin is higher than even the men participation, but yet we do not have a representation, not even a strong representation, in parliament, in the seat of decision. Women have no, voice in it. And I'm looking at it, and at the same time, I'm even feeling for women with disabilities. Because this is a struggle for, women. And then you're looking at, the ladder, and there is no space of the space for a woman living with disability. And it's just a struggle that I know that will probably continue for a while, but it's going to be a big and a tough fight.
The system will need your resilience. Now let's go to, the elections per se yesterday. In terms of everything, the logistics, the fear at the beginning of the process, especially after the postponement, and eventually what panned out yesterday. Let's stay with you, Grace. What will be your comment at this time, looking at the overall conduct of elections nationwide yesterday?
All right. I'm going to take us a bit backwards to, the election day proper that was postponed. First it came as a shock to all of us, to the whole of Nigeria. And I remember the uproar, how people were very, very angry. A lot of people had traveled, decisions have been made. I remember there was a very, very terrible hold-up somewhere around the Garki market, because, people were just shopping like it was the end of the world. And then all of a sudden it was postponed. And I remember people were just angry, the uproar and all of that. But typical Nigerians, we know how to absorb, issues. We know how to absorb things. And it wasn't like a day or two, people just went back to their normal life. And what inspired me the most is the fact that it gingered people up. Probably those who were not even ready to vote on the 16th now made up their mind that 23rd they were going to come out. And I'm glad the way the whole system, the country, more like everybody worked together, the transportation system, the airlines, everybody worked so that it becomes even more possible for everybody to participate. So the turnout yesterday was double, as far as I am concerned, of what should have been on the 16th. And then, a lot of people came to the polling unit, and then there was delay. That was what triggered people the most. The delay, I saw a video of a woman who brought her pillow and her mat and just laid down there. People were just angry. I saw another caption of, people were running into, I think it's somewhere around Mararaba. It almost cost a stampede. That's if not, it cost. The overall conduct yesterday, I must say that, it wasn't so palatable, but eventually Nigerians were able to vote. In some polling unit, it was earlier. I was able to observe, within the Abuja municipal, and I went as far as, what's the name of this place? Jabi. And, overall, we see the great turnout. Yes, some started earlier, some, there was a bit of delay, but eventually Nigerians voted.
Let me come to you, Doctor. You had feelers across the country and, the massive turnout. This is the fifth junction in our democratic cycle in the Fourth Republic. This is the 20th year of the Fourth Republic. Are we maturing? First, from the perspective of the political elite, and then the voters?
If I want to give you a yes or no answer, I would say yes, we're maturing. Because if you look at democracy anywhere in the world, it's a very delicate process, It's a very popular system of government, and even in the best, most celebrated democracies, like the United States of America, Canada, United Kingdom, there are still reasons for analysts to call them as flawed democracy. And what does this tell us? It tells us that, it's a process democracy is not a system of government that can be perfected overnight. The best form of democracy that we witness at present are those in the Nordic countries, Norway, Sweden, and the rest of them. And there's a reason for this. I know that it's a destination that we're on, and at some point in time, our democracy will grow better than it is. But what we need is consistency of practice. What we need is an uninterrupted process, like we witnessed in accordance with what you said in the last 20 years. I'm very optimistic that there's no doubt we'll get there, as long as it's not interrupted. But having said that also, we shouldn't take it for granted that getting there is just resting on our oars. Something that will drop from the sky. No, we have to work towards it. We have to be painstaking about it the way we are doing at the moment. And of course, the election I held in 1999, for instance, is far less credible than the one that I held in 2015, which means that we are growing. And it's growing around credibility, around fairness, around freeness, and even around transparency. Because people are becoming much more conscious. More stakeholders are becoming much more interested not just in the election itself, but in the pre- and the post-election stage. We have international and national observers, we have the media, we have the civil society, we have the political actors themselves, and we have agencies. The increasing interest is enough to propel us, is enough to tell us that yes, we are a nation, we're a sovereign nation, but we're not existing just for ourselves. We live in a borderless world. We live in an integrated planetary world, and that being so, there are certain things that we need to do that will comply with international best practices, so to say, that will comply with international standards. And if it doesn't, then there will be problems, a problem for us, one way or the other.
In my, observation yesterday, I discovered something in economics. I discovered that something in Nigeria is even costlier than gold, diamond, and currencies, and that's the ballot box. Because I discovered that a lot of interest on the ballot box yesterday, snatching and protecting it, and all eyes on the ballot box yesterday in parts of the country, in spite of the warnings by the president and all that. People still went for the ballot box. What would you say is the reason for this? It's almost become a culture. A ballot box must be snatched in every election.
I was just thinking, what if there wasn't a warning, a clear-cut warning? What if there wasn't a clear-cut warning? I can't even begin to imagine, what the scenario would look like, yesterday. It's just, over time, it's been about this, the two political parties. And all that is involved around it. I'm careful not to use the word the toggery and all of that. I'm careful, but for lack of a better word, you could see there's a great contention between these, two parties. And it's not even about the others, but these two parties are contending among themselves. And as much as, the warning has gone out, people were still ready to snatch ballot boxes. And that is because it's a matter of the strong interest of another political party over the other. When they begin to sense at, a certain polling unit or at a certain location or a certain state that this party probably is a lot stronger or have a lot of vote or have a lot of, interest from, the masses, that would result to, ballot box snatching.
That is a violation of the sanctity of the entire process.
Exactly.
What will be your comment on this?
I think it also speaks to the desperation of the average Nigerian politician for power. And why is this desperation? Because our state, our system is still very, very prebendal. And we think that without state power, without political power, without leadership power, without a public office, for instance, there's nowhere else that you can make money as quickly as possible. So the desperation, ballot box snatching, violence in election, speaks to the desperation of the average political person or the average politically conscious person or somebody acting for the politician, But we have to know that until our values, our virtues, our orientation change, before we can see politics as not necessarily a do or die affair, but just as a game where you can either win or lose. It is our attitude to public office, the attitude of our politicians, that condition that make these people, their supporters, to be violent, to be desperate, okay, about the processes that lead to their election. Okay, so values have to change, orientation has to change, but it's like I said again, it cannot come overnight. It has to come through a painstaking process, work that, okay, by a conscientious leader, by a leader that is sagacious, one that understands the overall problem that we have as a nation, and let's not forget, that's why sometimes I don't want us to be too hard on ourselves. Okay, there's no democracy, there's no system that does not have its own inherent problem. That could be our problem for now, but we'll get over it, especially when we move on to technology. By the time we have increased technology in our system, when we begin to vote virtually, electronically, then these physical items will begin to disappear. And the question of ballot box snatching will definitely go. So it's a developmental crisis, and I think we'll get there really.
I understand, what the feelers have had over time, and not just this, yesterday's exercise, is that because of the sheer offensive nature of what you described as thuggery, violence and all that, it doesn't advertise politics to perhaps the more, careful intellectuals in society, the gentler people in society. They don't want to try to aspire to positions of leadership because of some of the, forceful rigor that it entails, that you don't want to climb into a seat on somebody else's blood. How do we advertise the political space to people like this, especially against the backdrop of what transpired in some parts of the country yesterday?
For me, I would let me look at it from the angle of the youth, perspective. The fact that, a lot of youths are beginning to not even fear the process anymore. I want to dare the whole process, and put themselves out there. With the passage of, the Not Too Young to Run bill, and ready to run, and a lot of youths beginning to indicate interest. I'm looking at it like that could be the change of the narrative now, where people are no longer, these youths are no longer scared of this seemingly, issues and stories surrounding the processes before. For me, it's the youths putting themselves out there, daring the process, daring the system, changing the narrative. That is how I am going to coin it. That's how I'm going to put it.
My experience as a child, in 1983 in Ondo State was almost as if, elections were synonymous with war. Because you just see people running up and down with, with ballot boxes and all that. And as a child, we thought, what exactly was it like? Is it war? Is it this desperation? How do you go about, making, toning it down and putting some disincentive? Perhaps banning or whatever. What do you do?
Yeah, two things, Fisayo. We also need to appreciate the fact that the electionary process is ordinarily an exciting process in any country. It's a system where people come, they analyze the problems of the country, come out with programs around them. It's like a huge debating stage, okay, for the evaluation of a nation's problem. Okay, that's why you see people, the ordinary citizen, feels very important in the electoral process. They hold their PVC and say, yes, I'm going to vote. I'm going to decide who my leader is going to be. They feel very excited. They go to queue as early as 2 a.m., to demonstrate this. So it's an exciting process ordinarily. But the only problem is that when we now take it to a different level, when that excitement degenerates into violence, that's the problem. But I'm going to draw, there's a link between the level of level of development in the system and the marginal propensity to violence. Okay, ours is still very high because our value system, our virtual systems, is still very perverted because we think that the only source of quick wealth is government.
Winner takes all.
Yes, and we also think that we cannot really contribute to a system, to a society, if we don't hold public office. This cannot be the case. This is not really the situation. There are people in history who have made impact on their society, on their system, by not ever mounting the soapbox. Okay, we'll come to this understanding, like I keep arguing. We'll come to this understanding. But that's not to justify the level at which we are now. We can move very fast. We can move faster than we're moving. Because nations that we were at some point, we were together at the same level, who were formerly our peers, have left us behind. But we can learn from them. We can also learn from more civilized democracies as well. We have them to learn from. But how fast are we learning? I think we're not fast enough, really. But again, it's okay that we are in the conversation, that we're engaging ourselves, we're evaluating the situation, and the evaluation will lead to the production of leaders, okay, that will draw us closer to this destination. But before I round up on that, you asked her about elites' reluctance, to participate is again a problem of the process. Okay, the average elite does not want to go and stand on the queue in the afternoon, in the sun and all that for hours on end. Okay, in a queue that is populated, that has about 150, 200 people. I witnessed it yesterday. Some of them will just come in their state-of-the-art cars, watch the queue, and they'll get discouraged and go. Okay, probably reasons around ego, reasons around level of comfort, reasons around convenience. But again, technology and security too. Thank you, man. But at some point, technology can help us out of this, where you can vote anywhere you are.
I'm even looking at it
in the comfort of your home.
Yeah, I'm even looking at it from the perspective of, aspiring to positions, because that is where, all this comes from. The foot soldiers are just trying to help their principals into position. I'm saying some of the people who the nation would have benefited from their intellectual, prowess, their competence, wouldn't want to go through this rigor because of the perhaps attendance violence that have associated, have laced our processes over time.
Democracy is about choice. Okay, we say it's about inclusion, it's about participation, but it's also about choice. Choosing to go mount the soapbox, choosing to go and ask people to come and vote for you, it's a matter of choice. It's your own interest. It comes from your own determination, your own passion. People. What we can only do is to encourage people who are competent, to come out and run. And of course, we have many of them. It's about representation as well. And that's the essence of democracy. We cannot all be leaders. That's why. Philosophers who came with the concept, where it evolved in the United States, for instance, the idea was that we cannot all be leaders, so we need to have a system where we can elect, where we can have representatives that will go and lead us. But those representatives come through processes too. You see that they are nominated. You see that the people will come and say, okay, let's have this person, or they can also present themselves. We cannot force it. Okay, but what we're probably saying now, what you're probably saying is that more capable people should be encouraged or should come out to lead.
Perhaps yes, so that the process can perhaps bring out the very best in us. Let's look at. We understand that there's a report standing by. It's we started this particular conversation talking about the ballot box. The report will soon be ready. Of course, perhaps it was snatched on the way. But let's let's look at. Let's look at several aspects of this whole process, and that one is it's as if all systems shut down in the course of the process yesterday. Getting transportation to perhaps your polling unit was a challenge and all that. How can we get around this movement on that? Just that the whole process doesn't particularly shut down as if you just see very, very, the services were very, scanty, and then you couldn't move, especially if you didn't have a vehicle and all that. And perhaps where your polling unit was originally, you've moved, changed the address within the city, but, to get there.
I think we can look at it from different perspectives, really. One is the history of our voting process, and I think this closing of businesses, for election, gained greater ground in the period of the military, where they talk about democracy, they will talk about election, then they will say, okay, no movements, okay, so that people can concentrate, people can actually participate to increase voter participation and to discourage apathy. We can look at it from different angles, really. It has its positive and its negatives, but most importantly, it's not ideal. it is not. I remember, if you permit me to tell you this personal story, I once had a reason to vote in England. It didn't take me more than 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, because I just parked my car, logged it by the road, branched, and they identified my address, and I voted. It didn't take me more than 5 minutes. But again, even that one was even manual. It wasn't electronic. Okay, but as we are talking now, they have grown beyond that. They are now electronic. There's nothing is saying that we can't get to that level. And I'm very optimistic, that because our election in 2019 is better than 2015, and because 2015 was better than 2011, and because 2011 was better than 2007, okay, and because 2007 was better than 2003, and 2003 better than 1999, I'm positive that 2023 will be better than 2019 at the level of innovation. We weren't talking about card readers before. We weren't talking about smart card readers before. But we're talking about it now. And we're thinking about improving it. But that will even fade away. Because at some point in this country, Fisayo, we had nothing like ATM. ATM was new to us, But what is it? I mean, how are we able to do it? How are you able to withdraw money with your ATM based on an account that is domiciled somewhere? But you can withdraw money anywhere in the world with that card. So if we can achieve that, then we can achieve it in the electionary process as well. We can achieve it through the voting process. It's not rocket science. It's happening in other parts of the world. India is the largest democracy, much more. India is like 4 times the size of Nigeria. But they vote. Okay, how are they able to do it? Yes, there are problems. It's a flawed democracy, but the process of the workings of their system is still better than us. How are they doing it? We can learn from there. The US is also there, as the most prominent democracy, even though it's still flawed. We can also learn from them, okay? But we are growing. But the question is our learning process, fast enough? Is our pace good enough? We can increase our pace so that by 2023, we'll rather be celebratory. Much more celebratory than complaining.
Let me put this question to you. Having, observed some of, what transpired yesterday and perhaps in the course of other elections, a lot of people have beamed their own light on the umpire and perhaps said that the time frame for training for adult staff perhaps was not long enough to familiarize themselves with the technologies that he alluded to just now, because some couldn't operate some of these, devices when it was crunch time. What would be your word concerning some of these developments for perhaps which will be instructive for future elections?
For me, what I noticed yesterday was a big gap, with the ad hoc staff. Looking at it from this angle, there were a lot of new innovations for persons with disabilities that INEC came up with. And basically those were the things that we were even out to observe yesterday. The Braille ballot guide, the election day written instruction for the deaf, magnifying glasses, data. INEC is gathering their own data on the form EC40H, and other innovations like that. And those were the things that we were out to see, because in the history of our election, this would be the first time that, we're celebrating or we're talking about those innovations. We wanted to see how well, people with disabilities benefit from these innovations. And I noticed a bit of gap in terms of, first, voter education on how the disability community can even use some of these innovations. By the gap with INEC, and worst of all, even the ad hoc staff. Because I remember we went to one of the polling units, and one of the ad hoc staff there didn't even have an idea of what we were talking about. And a few other reports that came from other states where we deployed a team of observers, it was still, similar to that, where they didn't understand when you ask for an election day written instruction. Ordinarily, it's supposed to be on the wall. For people who are hearing impaired, as soon as they come, it shows you the processes and procedures to vote without anyone telling you. It shows you from when you're accredited to your card reader, everything to when you cast your ballot. It wasn't on the wall, and it just shows the gap within the training. And for me, What I was thinking yesterday was like, why do we have to wait till dying minute before these people are trained on, election day processes? Why do we have to wait? I don't know how the system works, but I think it's about time it's broadened. You allow, experts to come in and begin to train this staff ahead of time. Even if you don't train the ad hoc staff, you begin to train the key people, like a training of trainers, on what to do. But we don't wait till dying minute, because it's beginning to look like you wait till like a month or 3 months or 2 months to election, and such time is very, very short. Great innovations INEC came up with for the disability community, and a lot of money spent. Yet, in terms of utilization, it wasn't so, but then we still give it
I saw something very interesting, that they even had glasses for albinos.
Magnifying glasses,
yes. That was quite innovative. But let's, perhaps, taking something away from what you said, this is not something we conceived, talking about democracy. Nigeria came from a colonial background, and perhaps, a multicultural, multi-ethnic environment could be a reason for this challenge. Now, our correspondent, Dele Atumbi, looked at, historically, Nigeria's journey into democracy, the presidential, system of government, and intimate some of the finer points, perhaps to illuminate our understanding.
On attainment of independence on 1st of October 1960, the colonial masters bequeathed to Nigeria a parliamentary system of government. This is a system of government where a sort of fusion between the parliament and the executive arms of government, as well as prime minister and ministers, emerging from among the members of parliament. At the time of independence, Nigeria operated on regional basis, having the central government alongside western, eastern and northern regions. The dream of the founding fathers was a great Nigeria where the needs of all citizens will be met.
The peoples of Nigeria must at the same time be guaranteed their freedom.
It shows that there's one country with the strength of its conviction which not only denounces genocide, but at the same time espouses the right of people to self-determination.
We shall never impose ourselves upon any other country, and shall treat every African territory, big or small, as our equal, because we honestly feel that it is only on that basis of equality that peace can be maintained in our continent.
However, the parliamentary system of government was short-lived as a result of military intervention in 1966. Between 1966 and 1979 was a period of political interregnum.
In a parliamentary system, the head of government is also a parliamentarian, is elected just the very way all other parliamentarians are elected. It's just what they call first among the equals. And then the ministers are often they must, in most cases, be from the parliament. Of course, there may be some adjustments here and there to suit some local situations of different countries, but in most cases, the ministers are normally from the parliament.
And so the various constitutional conferences which resulted in the various constitutions before the 1963 constitution just did their best to craft some kind of parliamentary system. And I think we had House of Chiefs at some point and so on and so forth, none of which followed the classical model of the parliamentary system.
The advantage of it is that it saves cost, because first and foremost they see themselves as parliamentarians. Whatever is the problem that they are going to discuss of government, they bring it to the floor of the parliament and discuss it. And then they will take what is called a collective decision.
Nigeria in 1979 introduced another system of government when the country returned to a civil rule with the adoption of the American's presidential system. Tagged the Second Republic, Alhaji Shehu Aliyu Usman Chagari emerged as the president. This system of government operates on the basis of the principle of separation of powers, with the executive, legislature, and judiciary as the distinct arms of government.
The most striking feature of the presidential type is where those parliamentarians come together, but they do not elect anybody within them to exercise executive powers, but they just elect one of them to be the chief amongst all of them in relating to the executive system branch of the government, who is directly elected by the people. So in a presidential system, you have a president who is directly elected, while in a parliamentary system of government, you have someone who is elected by his peers to exercise executive powers.
It has enhanced the accountability process, whereby every president should know that I am accountable to the people who voted me, not only to the members of the parliament who voted me in parliament to be a prime minister.
The dreams of our founding fathers was a very tall dream, a legal one. They have a dream, a very tall dream, looking at a Nigeria that will outlive them. They look at a Nigeria that every citizen of this country will be proud of it.
Though the Second Republic was truncated in 1983, between 1999, when the Third Republic commenced, and now, observers say Nigeria has maintained a presidential system of government with meaningful development in all sectors. In Abuja, Dele Atumbi, NTA News.
I said earlier that, the report on the ballot box perhaps maybe was snatched on the way, but my producer says I am wrong. He has retrieved it. And let's take that report on ballot box.
Mostly square and typically transparent, the ballot box is an exclusively integral platform for elections globally, and indeed here in Nigeria. Historically, it has transformed in shape, size and color, never missing its essence and remaining a constant throughout Nigeria's democratic experience.
It is the image of democracy. Without the ballot box, the leaders don't come to power. The ballot box is the power of the masses.
It means a lot to me because that ballot box determines who becomes who today in this nation.
Beyond its role in elections, this seemingly simple box depicts public trust and is perhaps the first custodian of the people's trust.
You can go to market and see it, but it's not in this way, because it's what determines the result in the election.
So that the people will have that confidence in whoever they are bringing, and we wouldn't have incidents of people perpetrating themselves.
So we shouldn't drag it or snatch it or do away with it or burn it or harm it. We have to handle it with care as a good Nigerian that we are.
The ballot box, which is also a purveyor of some sort, is a national symbol. It is a reminder of political battles lost and won, as well as a beacon of opportunity for future political contests. In Abuja, Salihu Abdullahi, NTA News.
All right, earlier we were talking about, our history, politically. Yeah. You saw some, leaders of the past, of course, founding fathers of this country, Sardauna of Sokoto, Alhaji Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Chief Obafemi Awolowo. Till today, we have people politicians in the Southwest who still wear Awo's cap to canvass for votes. What is the place of ideology in today's politics, where there's a musical chairs of candidates? You go to this party, the next week you're in another party. Sometimes you change parties the same day. While in the morning you are in this party, by evening you are in another party. How confusing is that for the electorate?
Well, it also speaks to the level that we are in the evolution of our democracy. You know, the other thing is for us to have politicians who have very strong vision, who have very strong mission, and who have very strong objectives. And these objectives are not necessarily for reasons of prebendalism, not necessarily for reasons of self-aggrandizement, you know, but to genuinely better the lives of the people, to genuinely improve the lives of the people. And there are ways in which you can get people to believe in you, really. You know, there are so many ways in which you can get people to believe in you, and that's where it comes when you show proper leadership. And what is leadership? Other-centered behavior. Behavior that is much more concerned about the interests of the others as against the self. You know, you're talking about these leaders. What have they done in history? Everything they have done, you know, revolves around concerns for the populace, concerns for the masses around them. And most of them died, you know, died in poverty, quite a number of them. It's not to say that, you know, being poor is a virtue or that they shouldn't be rich, but most of them they prioritize the interests of the populace above the South. And the evidence are still there, even many years after they left us. Decades after they left us, the evidence is still there. So why wouldn't the average person believe in them? Okay, and you see, their commitment to ideas were just very profound. In books, in ideologies, in pronouncements and all, and in action, not just mouthing of it, not the modern day blabber mountain that we'll see. People they pay lip service to it, they just mention it and never implement. You know, these days, our fascination for material gains, for material wealth, is so profound that they just privilege themselves. They think more of themselves, more of personal comfort, as against the comfort of the greater good, of the greater majority. Okay, that's why you see, just like you said, you see an interest in the politicians using political parties as mere platform, because there are no deep-seated ideals, there are no deep-seated vision. Their concern is, okay, where can I make it? Where's the fastest place through which I can make it? Which is a platform that can facilitate my victory, my entry into public office, you know, as quickly as possible, so I can begin to get the benefits that I ordinarily desire. That's a problem. That's a problem, really. But look, we need to also be circumspect in this. We need to try to attempt some balance. It is not to say that, you know, they are not politicians who are above average. Okay, it's not to say that in our present day in Nigeria that there are no politicians who are doing well, who can comment. There are some of them who are very committed, who are very determined, who are actually really genuine. Okay, and there are instances, there are many, we probably shouldn't sound patronizing by mentioning names. But of course, there are many of them. Okay, but we need much more than the number we presently have, because these ones are just in the minority. We need people who are conscientious, who believe more in ideas, in ideals, than in material things. Okay, but to say that we can achieve this overnight again, we'll just be dreaming. Okay, they have to be a conscious attempt at value orientation. But value orientation does not also come without some level of economic prosperity, without some level of economic stability. Okay, our politics is growing, our political process is growing with the successful elections we are having. But what about our economic progress? We're not growing at that level. We're still a monocultural economy, which is very problematic. And that's why you see so much concentration around the center, because the center decides who gets what and how. Okay, that's why again we talk about restructuring, devolving power from the center to the states. All these things will have to come into play if we want to make significant progress at the level of building ideologies around our leaders and around our political process. It doesn't come in a day, but gradually, I want to see for the umpteenth time that we'll get there.
I will come to you now, and but after you answer, I still want Doctor to do same. Now, when our laws say you are voting for a party and not the individual, yet the individual jumps ship at every inconvenience or every perceived slight, how does the law back this process? After all, you see one in this party today, you see him in another party tomorrow.
I am not a law expert, but when he was speaking, what was playing over and over in my mind is, democracy for the people, by the people. No, democracy for the people, by the people, and with the people. I hope I'm not getting all of the government of the people. Yes, by the people and for the people. If you look at, yes, government of the people, you know, for the people, by the people. If you look at that statement, people came up 3 times. In other words, the stress, I mean, the underlying word there is people. It's for the people and not that individual. And over time, you look at the structure, you look at the system, it's beginning to look like it's about that individual. And that's why they keep jumping ship. Because if this doesn't play out as they want, they jump ship. Forgetting that it's a government for the people, by the people. And I think this is something that needs to keep resonating. It's something they need to keep pondering on. To tell themselves, if I am vying for this position, it's about the people. It's about the people. It's about the people. Put it out there. Put it forward. Make it like your watchword. Make it like your, the Lord's Prayer, so to say. Because if you have that mentality, if you have that consciousness, then I'm telling you what we're experiencing, what we are seeing these days will probably be different. Because it's about the people.
You want to speak to that, sir?
Yeah, I think I can agree more with her, because the people are the bedrock of democracy, definitely. Even from its original philosophical conception in the old Greek city-states, and from the time the practice started being expounded in the United States of America, it's about the people. The average human being is supposed to be a leader, okay, in him or herself. But it is inconceivable for us to have a situation where everybody will be leader. We need order. And that's why the question of representation comes in. And that's what democracy invites us to understand. Representation. You elect your leader freely, okay, fairly, and creditably. That's the idea. And transparently, if we want. Okay, but when leaders now get to the throne, what are they supposed to do? They have to remember that they have a covenant with the people. It's an exchange. They have a covenant. And what is that covenant? I've asked you to go and represent me in this place. Your priority shouldn't be you, because you are ordinarily, philosophically, on an errand. The priority shouldn't be you. It should be to the general population. And there's something also that is also very ideal. You'll find out that the more you do things for the populace, the more you do things for the generality of the people, the more your name is being ingrained in gold, the more you leave a legacy in their minds, and the more it becomes very difficult for you to be forgotten in the annals of history. Look at all the heroes of the world, all political, economic, war heroes in the world. What have they done? Why do people worship them? Okay, why do they have occultic followership even so? It's just because they prioritize the interests of others above the self. They prioritize the privilege, the interests of others above those of their own partisan interests, those of their family, and believing that until, they meet the needs of the people at different levels, in health, in education, and in all categories, before they will say, before they say, they've been up to the mark. We have seen this in history, and we'll never forget individuals that we'll be careful mentioning. But of course, in the record you played earlier, they are all over there. They are there. We can go back to history, and you see them there. They are not just in Nigeria, but all parts of the world. And what is the message we are passing in this conversation? That this is another opportunity for us to demonstrate the fact that there's no need for us to be die-hearted about political contest. By the time INEC start declaring the results, people should be peaceful about the way they accept it. A legacy was left for us in 2015, where a city president agreed and congratulated the winner. We can continue from there. Whoever wins, should be magnanimous in victory, and whoever loses should be gallant in defeat. It's not the end of the world. There's going to be another time. And if you are doing it in the first instance for the people, then there's no reason why you should go bonkers because you have lost.
Thank you very much for that succinct intervention. One thing that has, emanated from all this process is that there must be a handshake across the table after every election, because it's a collective desire of Nigerians for the country to move forward. So how can this game be played in a clean, seamless, and friendly manner? The next report is by Talatu Ezerike. She captions it, Politics Without Bitterness.
We have learned to live under the rule of law. We have learned to fight for the freedom of the individual. Would you like to substitute this so that a number of opportunist black imperialists will rule you and oppress you?
Politics in Nigeria predates stagnation, championed by the country's founding fathers with the sole intention of building solid democratic culture that will improve the well-being of the people.
While we of the people will say we are party of tomorrow.
One significant thing about the symbol of the action group is that it symbolizes what you want and what I want.
The Northern People's Congress, NPC, of Ahmadu Bello and Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroon, NCNC, headed by Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, and the Action Group, AG, led by Chief Obafemi Awolowo, all had the people's interests as priority.
We had people committed to the welfare of the people and the progress of the country.
The country is so united that because somebody belongs to another party, he's not looked at as an enemy.
Not mining ethnicity, whether you are Yoruba, whether you are Igbo, whether no that's ethnicity in Nigeria. So if we can follow that step, Nigeria will be peaceful.
The vision pursued by subsequent politicians in galvanizing national ideas and commitment to peace, progress, and stability in the country. But over time, issues such as survival in the national stage, tribalism, agitations, and political violence found their ways into national politics. To nip all these in the bud, actions were taken in many flashpoints where they were threats to national survival and progress. The 30-month civil war ended with resolution to keep Nigeria one, with no victor, no vanquish. Despite the impact of these reconciliatory measures to heal the wounds of the civil war, the return to civil rule in 1979 saw Alhaji Waziri Ibrahim of blessed memory championing politics without bitterness and good governance, which he canvassed as the then presidential candidate of the great Nigerian People's Party, GNPP. Political observers say the philosophy, the make or destroy mindset of politicians is key for national development and political maturity.
You cannot have a strong, virile political system without an entrenched culture of political tolerance. Vying for election is like sport. At the end of the day, there will be winners and losers.
After the election, Nigeria continues. No matter who become president, is only for 4 years, Nigeria continues.
The campaign for politics without bitterness is still on and even taken further with the introduction or signing peace accord by parties and candidates, which is yielding results. Former President Goodluck Jonathan calling to concede defeat at the 2015 elections to President Muhammadu Buhari is seen as a big plus for the campaign of politics without bitterness.
In this part of the world, especially in Nigeria, that was the first time such thing was happening. And he also realized that it is God who giveth power and who taketh power.
But the politicians are the ones who are on the stage. They said, Shakespeare said, all the world is a stage. They are the ones on stage now. So if you win, fine. If you lose, bow out gracefully.
2019 is here, and Nigerians are deciding who leads them. Again, the need for peaceful process anchored on issues devoid of hate, violence, and heated polity is advocated.
Nigerian women, representing our youths and people with disability, want peace. There is nothing more than peace, and we eschew bitterness.
At a time like this, the clarion call is for politicians to play by the rule, understanding that democracy is governed of the people, by the people, and for the people. Talatu Ezerike, NTA News.
Politics without bitterness. Of course, it's the bitterness that leads to violence. And I'm happy to say that we're being joined now by the Assistant Inspector General of Police, Babati Jani. He is the AIG Zone 7 here in Abuja. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning.
First of all, let's ask you about your own assessment in terms of security yesterday as the conduct of the election here in Abuja.
Well, here in Abuja, as at yesterday, and the records available before me indicated that the election was generally peaceful, fair, free, transparent, and to crown it all, it was, in fact, very grateful.
Let's look at it from your men, perspective of your men. Any challenges?
There were some few challenges, but they were overcome.
I'm sure Edgy will not want to tell us where, but we'll still come back to you, sir. You saw that report, Politics Without Bitterness. What causes, these frictions that, politicians eventually use their followers as cannon fodder in the electoral process? We've talked about Ballot 19, but we're talking of all-out attacks on, rival groups and all that. So what precipitates or leads to this?
Well, I think we actually went close to it much earlier. It comes from desperation. There's nothing else to it, and a poor understanding of what the political process should be. The political process, I heard somebody said it should be like a game, and like a competition, a sporting competition, where before you even go into it, you know that there are two options. It's either you win or you lose. Okay, and if you win, you need to just be magnanimous, and if you lose, you need to be gallant. There's always going to be another time. And again, we've also said it that the essence of political contests, like they all have also told us, is to serve the people. Most of the time when they are talking, they say, okay, my people have called me, I'm going to serve my people. Okay, if you're going to serve your people, it means that you want to provide leadership. You want to do things other than, you want to do things for others other than yourself. So if the interest is to serve the people, then why do we have to be die-hearted about it? Why the desperation? Okay, why do you think that blood has to be spilled before you serve the people? Okay, so it just speaks to the fact that there's still a huge level of hypocrisy. There's still a huge level of lying about the process, because you do not have to be bothered about commodifying the process, thinking that first of all you have to pay some people, and if that's not working, then you descend into violence, okay, because you want to go and serve the people. Okay, serving the people should be a service, a glorious service, an ideal thing, a noble thing, a honorable thing. Okay, and there's no basis really for us to get people to be violent about it. We need to understand this thing, and it's about our value system really, our value orientation. Our value orientation is still material. It's still about means. It's still how much. It's about how many cars you have, how many houses you have. Okay, how much money you have in your bank account, how many people can you corral around yourself, how many wives can you marry, for instance, how many bodyguards can you have, So for you to do all those things, you think you need as much money as possible. And because our system is still very weak, people take advantage of it, to plunge their hand into public till. Okay, and one way in which they think they can do this is to get into political power. And by the time they get into political power, they begin to pervert these processes. Those are the things that's why people become very desperate for political office. It shouldn't be so. And it's definitely not so in other countries. You see how they get into power in the UK, in the US, and you see how they even change power. If it doesn't work, they just step out. Okay, we've seen American presidents leave, and it's only when they leave that they will start working on mortgages to buy houses. We've seen it before. Okay, you saw how David Cameron left the UK prime ministership position the other day. He left very easily for Theresa May to come in. Nothing, no drums, nothing. He just stepped out and he was even the one packing his load. So the values are different. Our value orientation has to change. But again, I keep saying it, we also have to be fair to ourselves. We are at a level of development, okay, but we can actually move faster than we are moving. We can actually move faster than we are moving. And one way of doing this is to have the conscientious, rightful leader that will galvanize us. It's not to say that we have not been close to this, or we've been close to having this kind of leadership. And some of them are all around. But like we said, we're not going to mention their names. But they are there. I can learn from them. Okay, we can invest more, believe more in them, and hope that they will stay focused.
Ms. Grace Jerry, you know, a lot of people mistook the last 2-3 weeks as perhaps the end of Ramadan fast or Christmas because of the exchange of gifts, especially from politicians to the electorate. Bags of salt, rice, even bread in some places. It seems as if the electorate or perhaps the voter is still vulnerable. Is that as a result of perhaps pervasive poverty in the land, or perhaps it has now become a medium of redistribution, as one of our guests said yesterday? Or is that the only time you get to the politician to at least roll down his tinted glass and then perhaps converse with you?
You know, partly I would attribute it to, you know, level of poverty and then ignorance. And, you know, how can a country hold, you know, its masses to ransom when, you know, people are hungry, people do not have... Of course, whatever you throw at them, whatever you wiggle in front of them, they will take it. They will take it. For me, I'm going to address Nigeria as a whole. It's about time you don't fall for anything. No matter how hungry you are, that bag of salt or that cup of rice will definitely finish. It's just a matter of hours. And it's finished, you know. And whatever you collect from them at that moment, just look at it like that's, you know, for the next 4 years. That's the little you already have, you know, have access to. One of the things we do in the areas of our campaign is to tell people, see, if you collect 1,000 naira, that goes your access to healthcare. That goes access to employment. That goes access to, you know, whatever infrastructure that is supposed to benefit you. Why don't you put an accountability demand on this leader? Point blank, say no to that bag of, you know, a small bag of rice or bread. For goodness sake, how long can a bread last? In a matter of a minute, it's over. In a matter of hours, it's
Maybe
over.
if you include butter.
No, give me the bakery. That's it. Give me the bakery.
AIG, let me come to you. You know, some developments yesterday. We had a police officer in the course of Nigeria decides, and he was talking about 3 rings: the inner, middle, and outer ring, perhaps to secure the polling unit. But in parts of the country, in spite of the president's warning, we still saw political thugs still break into these places, snatch the ballot boxes, and disappear, almost like an action movie. What exactly, can perhaps your men do in subsequent elections to make sure that this is rebuffed, discouraged, and that's the disincentive to these acts?
Well, there is no doubt that in some few areas such were recorded. But it was as a result of the fact that the areas that were involved were in fact vulnerable from even right from the word go, because of shortage of manpower that was inclined to that particular area. But however, that was observed, and we are going to improve towards that in future.
Okay, that's encouraging, especially since we have elections again in another 2 weeks. We will learn from this process. One of the challenges of this process, of course, is the fact that it's good. We have massive voter turnout, people coming out, just like Ms. Grace said earlier. But that, of course, is a challenge to the security forces. But looking at, you gave us the historical perspective, especially this Fourth Republic, an improvement you've seen from 1999, a leap in 2003, 2007, 2011, 2015, and now. In terms of, the voter, as we said earlier, is it getting more matured? Is it getting more enthusiastic? Or is it getting perhaps discouraged by some of these happenings?
The voter is an innocent person, ordinarily. The average person, the average Nigerian voter, anywhere in the world even, just an innocent person. But when election comes, you excite him or her. He feels a sense of importance, He feels that an electionary process is a time to boost his self-esteem, consciously or unconsciously. He gets his voting card, however it is operated, and proceeds to queue. You could see that enthusiasm. You will love that process. You will see that faithfulness in participating in nation building. You know, and don't forget that anytime an election comes, that's when it's a moment for us to remind ourselves of an emerging community, of our Nigerianness. Okay, the way people queue in Kano is the same way people are queuing in Lagos. The way people are queuing in Calabar is the same way people are queuing in Sokoto. And you feel that excitement. Oh, you know, people are actually passionate. The ordinary Nigerian innocent person is passionate about this country. Okay, I mean, for taking that pain to go and queue, preparing to exercise a civic responsibility. So you appreciate that at that level. But the tragedy is when he now votes in his leaders and they start disappointing him. You know, so the voter will always be ready. They will continue to remain innocent, but they are also there to be guided. They are also there to be protected by the security agencies. They are there to be led properly by their leaders. Okay, because they are innocent. Okay, and that's why we keep saying that let the politicians not be taking advantage of these people. You know, you go and give them some money, you commodify the process because you know that they are feeble, they are in want. So you take advantage of them. And at the end of the day, you fail them in many instances. But again, you may not even blame the politician because it's just taking advantage of a system that is weak. Because if past leaders, for instance, have been responsive to their duties, they will have provided some of the things that the average voter probably needs that he lacks, but now thinks that if he gets 10,000 naira, 5,000 naira from somebody, he can use it to satisfy himself. Healthcare, education, just something to even feed, also for transportation. Okay, in other advanced countries where all these things are easily available, you know, if you give somebody tips sometimes, you wonder why you are giving him tip. No, I'm fine. He will tell you, no, I'm fine. That's fine. Because there's nothing he needs that he cannot get through the instrumentality of the state, of government. Okay, but we are still lacking this thing here. That's why we keep talking about us keeping our eye on the bigger picture, on the system, and not individualizing it. You don't say that you are the problem of this country, I'm the problem of this country. We need to look at it from a holistic process, from a holistic view, and get the right leader, you know, that will take us out of this doldrum. It is not to say again that we don't have examples. We'll keep making that point. We have examples of good leaders around, but not to sound patronizing.
We need a bigger spread.
Yeah, we need a bigger spread, so that let's not patronize any one of them by mentioning it. We have them in government position, in agencies, and we have them, but we need more of them.
All right, let's put this your analysis on the voter to some statistics in terms of 1999 to now. Here, 99. Okay, voters in 1999. Remember that we're coming back from the military era. You know, General Abubakar Abdul-Salam was conducting that one. We had about 57.93 million registered voters, and perhaps because we were a bit rusty, there was an aborted, you know, Third Republic under General Babangida then. So we had just 30.28 million people turning out, which is just about a little over 50% of the voters, registered voters, 52.3%. Now, after 4 years, there was some enthusiasm, and we had about an increase of 12 million in 2003. Of course, the police officers would be working harder at this time to make sure they man all the booths. 60.82 million. The voter turnout was higher as well. You had 42.01 million, which is 69.1%, and that's the highest ever in terms of voter turnout against registered number of voters. There was a decline in 2007, only 1 million more voters registered, 61.56 million, and then even there was a decline also in the number of voters that turned out on election day, 35.39 million, which was 57.47%. In 2011, you know, there was another improvement in terms of registered voters, another 12 million plus, you know, coming to register. There's 73.52, and then there was a slight increase, a better performance, if you look at it in terms of what happened in 2007, 39.46 million, 53% of the voting population. And the last election, there was a decline, 67.42 million 29.23. I think that's perhaps the worst performance of the lot. 29.23 million. That's just 43.65%. A lot of people say for the sanctity of the process, you need more people to turn out to show that that's always a popular vote. Then let's look at for this year. Of course, we don't know what the numbers are until INEC gives us about yesterday's exercise. But in terms of the number of registered voters across the country, let's look at the registered voters. Some of the states, Abia has about 1 million, almost 2 million, 1,932,892 voters, registered number of voters, and 1,000,007, so just about 202,000 people that didn't collect their PVCs. They are there in the central bank. After the election process, they would bring them out. In Adamawa, of course, that is the home front of one of the contestants. 1,973 registered voters, and of course, a number of PVCs collected. You have 1,788,000, and then you have 184. So you can see that in terms of the numbers are much higher, this year. So when you look at the issue of voting, let me ask you, in terms of these numbers, are you expecting to see a bigger turnout in terms of percentage? 84 million, of course, registered voters, 72 point something million collected. Are you expecting to see a bigger percentage of voters when the numbers come out?
My answer at this moment would be yes. I look at it from, the campaign that we have been carrying out, the Access Nigeria Disability Votes Matter. For one, it's targeted at the persons with disability community. And when you look at the number of that community, we're looking at about 29.7 million or over 29.7 million Nigerians living with disabilities, who have not really, participated or who have showed very little interest. But since 2016 till date, we've been carrying out this campaign on massive get out the vote. It's important you go out there and exercise your franchise, first as an equal citizen, of Nigeria, and secondly because we are trying to change the narrative to have an increased participation of people with disabilities. So in terms of participation and in terms of the numbers going up, I would say yes. In fact, I can't even wait to see what the percentage will look like or the turnout would look like. But I am very positive about it going up.
An impressive aspect of this whole process is the fact that you said it, you made that point. Not too young to rule, was an issue, and we have had younger people come. We'll talk about the House of Representatives very briefly. It seems as if the age group, is going even a bit lower now. 25 to 35, we can see is the biggest percentage there, 27%, but the highest percentage is between 36 and 45. You can see that it's getting better. So I think it looks to me, that, this election is speaking to youths, and the youths are getting involved, not just to vote, but actually to become candidates.
Disrupting the system.
All right, and that takes us to the issue of the House of Representatives. Just as we said, there is a huge turnover of reps. Why is this so? We'll find out in our next report.
On Saturday, 23rd February 2019, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, will conduct the rescheduled presidential and National Assembly elections. Nigeria's bicameral legislature has a total of 469 lawmakers, 109 for the Senate and 360 at the House of Representatives. The 8th Assembly was inaugurated on June 9, 2015, and has about 4 months now to wind up. This Saturday's election is the legitimate process to become a legislator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and 4,680 candidates are contesting for the 360 seats at the House of Representatives. The National Assembly has a tradition of high turnover after every national election. In 2015, for example, about 2/3 of House members in the 7th Assembly lost out during primary and general elections, thus vacating the Green Chambers. Already, more than 50% of current members of the House of Representatives will be excluded from the 9th Assembly, having lost out at party primaries, with very few others choosing not to seek re-election. The number of those not returning is expected to increase after the elections this Saturday due to the fact that contesting does not guarantee automatic mandate to represent their constituencies. Lami Ali, NTA News.
All right, many thanks for that report. Let me quickly, first of all, tell you, of course, we have three analysts who have been here from the beginning of the program about 7 o'clock. We've had, of course, today Dr. Abiodun Adeni, senior lecturer of the Department of Mass Communications, Bayes University, and of course we've had, of course, Grace Jerry, convener Access Nigeria campaign, and AIG Babatijani is of AIG Zone 7 Abuja. Gentlemen and lady, I want to commend you because NTA reached out to you, you promised to come, and you are here. That's a promise kept. But what is it about politicians and their own campaign promises? Abdullahi Garba Bininkudu tells us more.
Extremely happy to be here at home in Ogbomoso.
There is no doubt that Nigeria has come a long way in its democratic practice from one-party system to multi-party system, with the nation currently fielding candidates in more than 90 political parties. This is not a mean achievement in the 59 years of nationhood, but these achievements could not have been possible without the contribution of the political class who ride on the back of political parties to seek for political offices, thereby hold the leadership positions to move the country forward. In contesting for such offices, politicians make promises which many believe as the beginning of their problems with the electorates. Political observers believe politicians are at times carried away by the euphoria of the campaigns and make unredeemable pledges.
I want to assert that most of them are not feasible. Because I remember very well we had an interaction with one of the governors at a forum, and he said politicians should be mindful of the feasibility of promises they make, because they have to look at the financing issue, they have to look at a lot of other considerations, so that they can make promises that are realistic, But in most cases, these promises are just, promises that politicians just feel like just expressing them without taking cognizance of the reality on ground. So, and I think they get away with it because the people, the electorate, are not really interrogating them.
I think this issue of money politics and godfatherisms have come to finish and clear all those party objectives and even missions and visions at times. That's what is currently going on.
Advice is that if they are ready to rule, they should come to rule. If they are not ready to rule, they should stop promising and fail, promising and fail. For instance, now, many of them has promised us here and there, this and this. But immediately they step in there, they forgot everybody. They forget their promises.
Many agree political ideology and keeping to campaign promises go hand in hand, meaning political parties with good ideologies fulfill their campaign promises. The point is the need for political parties to work and supervise their elective officers in implementing promises made during campaigns.
You make a promise, for instance, if you want to build a university. You know what it means to build a university. The electorate who are being promised that a university is going to be built for them should be able to understand what it means to build a university.
To the electorate, whom the politician try to sell himself to, must also likewise be able to analyze if the politician is making promises that are realistic. That is very, very important.
Abdullahi Garba Kudu, NTA News.
Grace is still here. You saw that report, campaign promises. and that has led to a lot of dissatisfaction from the part of the electorate. How do we begin to hold them accountable?
Yeah, first, let me even start by saying it just shows you the kind of leader or the kind of person, an individual that leader, is. Why would you make promises that you cannot keep? Why would you raise false hope of people? Because if you look at an average, Nigeria, or people in, the grassroots, the rural area, all they hinge to, all they cling to is that hope that you raise, only for it to come, get to that point where it is dashed. And, election come, election go, is this same people where you have failed, these same people which you have failed, that come out to still either vote for you or vote for another leader who would still come and make promises that would not keep. I saw a picture yesterday where people who came out could not even stand the scorching sun. And they had to put stones, put bottles, like they created a line just to hold their space in the line. And I saw that and I'm like, wow, imagine how far Nigerians can go, how much they can suffer, how much they can take just to elect a leader who would come and change, the situation of the country for them. Only for that leader to come in and, it's a different scenario entirely. Holding that leader to account is very, very key, where after 4 years they don't deliver, get another person, elect another leader. For me, we keep changing until, we get to that point where it begins to work, to benefit everyone, to benefit you as a person, to benefit the people. It's the office of the citizen, So if you come in there, it should be about the people. So after 4 years, if a government does not deliver, it's important that within that 4 years, you're already mapping out plans on how to, for someone else to succeed. Someone else who is more credible, who would hold the country, who would keep to their word concerning the country. For me, that's what it is.
AIG, let me ask you, what will make your job easier? Have you been engaging with stakeholders, the voters, the candidates, in terms of their conduct on election day or pre-election day? You saw what transpired in the course of, the pre-election hours, the pre-election hours, the crossfire, the threats, the arguments, and those things. A lot of people believe, perhaps, stimulate some of these problems you get on polling centers, the political leaders, inciting their followers to, do one or two things that are unpatriotic.
Well, as we are all aware, when the Inspector General of Police came on board, the election was knocking at the door. So he quickly, in fact, ensured that there was a guideline action plan for the 2019 general election. The guideline action plan covers the pre-election period, the election proper, and the post-election period, which we are in right now. Now, the contents of the pre-election periods are enormous, among which the commissioners of police were directed in their respective commands to ensure that they organize constant meetings with the stakeholders, which includes the political parties. At the same time, preach peace with them, sign peace accords, etc. And there was also meetings, conferences, and lectures between the police officers on the ground, the stakeholders, and the politicians to ensure that the electionary process is peaceful.
All right, let me, stay with you. In terms of landmass, the country is huge. In terms of population, it is the 7th largest in the entire world, the largest in Africa. Your men have been stretched thin. Have you been able to man all the booths, almost 200,000 across the country? And in places where, of course, we've had skirmishes close to the borders in Chad and Cameroon, in Borno and all that, and of course the riverine areas, have you been able to stretch your officers to all those centers?
Well, as you can see, the country is very vast and is the largest in Africa. Now, the police have a peculiar problem that is of gross shortage of manpower. So we ensure that we must work together with other security agencies, i.e. the immigration, the customs, the civil defense, etc. So we were able, in fact, to cover the 119,973 polling units throughout the country. And there is no any polling unit you will go in this country where you will not see at least 3 security agencies.
Okay, so of course, what you're saying is that they were all well manned. Looking at it, what the IG has said, sometimes it seems to me as if some of these hoodlums take advantage of, a polling center that has hundreds of people, and you have about 3 or about 2 policemen in the inner ring not carrying weapons. You have, in the outer ring, a few, and then you look at it and see that maybe the situation is calm. The next thing you hear, ballot boxes have been snatched.
Yeah, it's also, it's a very complex thing, very intricate really, and it tells us that we still have a great level of ignorance among sections of the Nigerian population, because violence sometimes is a product of ignorance. And this kind of misdemeanor definitely is a product of a lack of understanding, because you are putting yourself in harm's way when you go and grab that kind of public property. You know the implication. If you are caught, if you are apprehended, of course you are likely to lose your freedom after trial. And it's going to be pain. You become unproductive. You become inefficient. So looking at it from that philosophical, natural perspective, we know that a person who does that is an ignorant person. And first of all, we can also look at it from a larger viewpoint by saying that perhaps we need to increase our literacy level, get people to understand that their freedom is very important, and anything that will make them lose their freedom, they shouldn't be engaged in it. And I don't see anybody who is productive doing that really. If you're productive, if you're gainfully employed, if you're a happy person, I don't believe that anybody can lead you to crime ordinarily, although there are many reasons why people could go into crime. Some people may just enjoy it, but ideally you do not expect anybody who is productive to himself and to his society to want to lose his freedom, or to even harm himself, or to walk in harm's way by going to grab a ballot box. What level of desperation will lead you to that? You won't allow anybody to use you to do that. So it's unfortunate we are still at that level. Yes, perhaps we need more education. We need people to understand better, understand issues better, and we need our government to also be much more responsive. But again, why will people use people to commit those kind of crime? Why are we desperate for power? What is the big deal about power?
Let me let Grace Jerry come in here. The pictures are not confirmed, but we've seen things on the social media about people even, perpetrating jungle justice on some, ballot box snatchers and all that. It looks to me to be an ugly development, in this time and age.
It is. In fact, the whole idea of the jungle justice thing, it's something that needs to really, really be addressed. How can people take matters into their hands and end a life of an individual on the spot? Sometimes, if you even look critically at the circumstances or the issues, I'm talking generally now, you have not even listened to the side of that person's story yet, or the reason for, such, why or he or she, had to commit something or not even commit something, but jungle justice is taken on the spot. For me, generally, that whole concept needs to be addressed. And then, at the polling unit where people are gunned down or, are lynched on the spot, I don't encourage that too as well. It's terrible, But then if you look at it, I said earlier here, it's just a clash between, the interest group of this party and the interest group of this party. And if you look at it, it's the whole general Togri thing where it's more like a lifestyle for them, where they can lynch someone and not even feel it on the spot. And from the little narratives I got here and there, those the attack, or rather the gunshots, didn't even come from the, the force personnel that were at the unit. It was the the two contending parties, so to say, that are lynching one another. And for me, the whole idea of the jungle justice needs to be addressed. Whoever comes into government, whoever comes into power, should work drastically to end such process.
Just before the elections, towards the turn of last year, we saw customs display a huge number of weapons that were, apprehended at the borders, perhaps trying to gain access into the country. The proliferation of small arms and all that. Could that be, one of the causes of, firearms getting into the hands of some of these young dissidents?
Apart from that, you know that in some part of this country, they also fabricate locally made firearms. And that is also been in circulation. There were some arrests made yesterday, and most of them were locally made pistols. So it's not only importing firearms into the country, but it has reached a stage that we have some part of the country that are fabricating these locally made
Negative innovation.
Of course.
So, what are the reports that you've had from some of these? Before any election, we had, what you force people categorize as flashpoints, perhaps places you project could have some of these issues of, violence. And how do you normally prepare adequately for such places? Okay, historically, things like this may happen.
Well,
do you increase men, for instance?
During our threat assessment before the election, we identified some flashpoints, states like Kaduna, Rivers, etc. And what the IG did was that he deployed commissioners of police to each senatorial district of those flashpoints affected. And that has yielded positive results in terms of...
As against one per state?
Yes. That is why when you sum total the whole development in that respect, you find out that the Inspector General of Police, in person of Alhaji Adamu Mohamed Abubakar, MPM, MNI, deployed 6 Deputy Inspector General of Police, 20 Assistant Inspector General of Police, 95 Commissioners of Police, 178 Deputy Commissioners of Police, 541 Assistant Commissioners of Police to cover the 109 senatorial districts, 360 federal constituencies, with 973,000 polling units. And it has yielded positive results throughout the country.
All right, let's. What are you taking away from this election as you prepare for another one which comes in a fortnight?
For now, we are still collecting reports, incidences, and at the end of the day, a memo will be written by the Department of Operations to the Inspector General of Police, where it will be vetted and further directives will be given to that effect.
Talking about the early reports, for instance, the feelers you've had from, across the country, are you satisfied with the performance of your men and sister agencies that were deployed for this exercise?
Yes, considering our strength, the implements and tools we have, I'm partially satisfied with what we have right now on the ground.
Why partially?
It's because we have challenges. And in as much as the challenges are not overcome, there is no way we can easily perform to the desired objectives of what we want to have as a standard in a growing nation.
Let me come to you, Doctor, and ask you the same question. What do you think we can take away? The security agencies, it's not the police alone. They had to, collaborate with others to make sure that, because of their numbers, they could increase the size of those who will maintain law and order. What can we take away from yesterday's exercise that could be instructive and useful in the next 2 weeks?
Very well. On a general note, there was relative peace in the country. There were no serious stories of incidents, like he said, apart from Rivers and I think Lagos, usually in the past it used to be worse than this. So that's quite heartening, that we are getting to a level of sanity, in our electioneering process. And we just hope that it will continue like that, because the governorship elections are elections, and State House of Assembly elections that are closer to the people. So there could be much more tension in those localities. Don't forget that we say politics is local. There could be much more tension in those localities because they are closer to the people. People can become much more passionate. We can only admonish them to up their hands, and to be more watchful when it comes to that election, really. And what more can we say? They are also critical stakeholders. They are not people from the sky or from the moon. They are also Nigerians. We need them. We need them as much as they need us. We're all going to be beneficiaries of the output of the political process. So they need to be conscientious. They need to be committed, and they need to be dogged. And having said that, we just say, may God help them too.
Miss Grace Jerry, there's an aspect that we may not have spoken about too much. You mentioned it in passing, and that is the disability votes. Yeah. You had at least a member of Disability Vote Matters. And you said, of course, INEC made provisions for this segment of society. But you also, noticed that not many of the features were being utilized properly. Is it from the perspective of INEC alone, or perhaps voter education was perhaps a bit short or lacking?
I think generally it's both ways. In terms of voter education, there wasn't so much time, for that to really go round. And I can't completely blame it on INEC, because in terms of availability of these innovative materials and the deployment, the time was quite short. It was, I think, a week or two to the election. And, before they would start voter education. In fact, Inclusive Friends had to play like, a complementary role in terms of carrying our voter education to this community as far as we can and as quick as we could. We came up with very short videos that, we compressed and spread around social media. It was on TV, playing over 8 times in a day. So we can play that complementary role to INEC. And I think overall, civil society organizations have done a good job in terms of playing such complementary roles to, further support the process, the INEC process. I won't completely blame it on INEC, but for future purpose, there is need to start voter education in good time. In fact, as soon as this election is over, for 2023, the process begins immediately. We don't wait till a year or two to the elections, to 2023. We begin, already. And already there are off-cycle elections that will come up sometime in 2020, 2021, all the way to 2023. So I call on INEC to begin to improve on these processes of ensuring that there's proper and adequate training. And I mentioned earlier that there is need to involve, the expertise of civil society organizations, of even international donors, to begin to do like a training of trainers ahead of time, so we improve on the process moving forward.
Now, how do we make, Doctor, how do we make this process, let's say, less costly? Last week, there was a postponement. It took a toll on our economy. This weekend, same, of course, we thank God that went through. In a fortnight, we have another set of elections, and that will also be a drain on our purse. So how can we perhaps rejig this process? We are not the richest nation in the world. But the monies that have been expended to just elect a few officers that will guide the fortunes of states for the next 4 years seem to be even more than some of these states or regions will get in some time.
It's a very straightforward thing, really. We have to be compliant with new changes in the world. Technologies of communication are fast increasing, and it is common knowledge that we are becoming increasingly virtual, increasingly electronic. There are even projections, of course, that we're getting to, we're in a world of artificial intelligence, augmented reality, the Internet of Things, and we need to embrace technology as quickly as possible, okay? And we said earlier that we're getting close to it. Those days, what it was. If you want to get information, maybe you're a businessman in Abuja or in Kano, okay? You want to know whether your goods have arrived at the ports in Lagos. What do? You write letter. Or you travel to Lagos from Kano just to get information, okay? But that's many decades ago. But that's not the situation these days, just a dial of a button, you just dial some buttons, you are talking to somebody in Lagos, and you can do it in so many ways. You can send documents and all that. Life has become a little easier for us. It's going to continue at that level, and it's even continuing at a very frenetic level. We need to embrace it, understand that there's a sense in saying that technology can help us reduce our costs at different levels. Our electioneering process is still hugely physical, okay? It's still hugely physical in terms of material, in terms of deployment of people and all that. By the time we begin to bring it up at the level of electronic, at the level of virtuality, then the cost will start reducing. Okay, there's so many things that we are doing physically, so many things that we rely on manual labor, but the world is moving away from energy power, to brain power. Okay, the world is moving away from muscle to machine, and we cannot be left behind. We have to move in tandem with it. We have to move in accordance with it. We're doing it at different levels. At the level of crime prevention, we're doing it in the private business banking sector. Okay, it has to be introduced very well as well into the political process.
All right.
Until we do that, we're going to be having problems.
You just mentioned the aspect of security, of course, and that takes me back to AIG. We have to put into consideration the fact that elections were postponed last week. It happened this week. How are you motivating the rank and file? We saw pictures of policemen being drenched in Lagos. Perhaps we did not anticipate that it was going to rain. It rained in Lagos yesterday, and they had to stay by their duty post and all that. How are you motivating them? How you motivate Nigerians. Are you putting that into consideration for your men, especially now that what was supposed to be just 2 weekends has become 3 based on that postponement?
Well, the officers and men, as usual, are addressed and briefed before deployed. During the briefing, they were motivated. Their allowances were paid. And they were made to understand that this is a shortcoming for a short time. And therefore, they should bear it. It is a national sacrifice. So we don't have any problem with our men.
And what are the feelers, especially in terms of, the entire process from, your men, perhaps even in collaboration with other agencies, especially in places where, as Grace said earlier, the weather was not so clement, the weather was not so friendly, where the harsh sun, the rains and all that?
Well, as serving men, we are trained to serve in any condition. And as such, we are not bothered about the harsh condition in Nigeria.
All right, AIG, let me come to Grace very quickly. As an election observer, what are the experiences, perhaps even in other climes, that could be instructive for us in terms of, perhaps deploying them, perhaps using them, either, of course, this one has gone, but in subsequent elections? Some practices that you think we can, you've seen in other climes or you've read about that we could help our own processes as well.
Yeah. I'm going to borrow from Doctor, because over and over he keeps talking about improving on the system and going digital, going technology, And I think it's something Nigeria should begin to move towards, where people can sit in the comfort of their home and just cast their ballot. We would record an increase in participation even with that. And I like to always make reference to a typical life of a person with disability who would have to travel distance, either on their wheelchairs, on their roller skate with their white cane, having to undergo the rigors to get to a polling unit. you know. But then when we go and you talk about the transitioning process from 1999 to this point, 2019. 2023, I want to believe that we can go even more digital because the process has actually improved. I would give it to INEC, I would give it to, all those who have worked to go digital. I was even seeing on one of the, I can't even remember one of the sessions where, is it teleport? You teleport someone from another studio, he stands in your own studio, hologram, or what do you call those things? I believe that is the, what we should gear towards, where Nigerians can actually vote from the comfort of their homes or just walk away from their homes.
There is an aspect that we have to look at. Of course, we have spoken about our democracy. It's 20 years of, democracy now, the Fourth Republic. A child who was born when we moved into, the Fourth Republic can actually vote in these elections. So that means that we have, seen a stretch of time. But even the United States democracy, the last experience between Hillary Clinton and President Donald Trump was not without its challenges. So, because right now they're still talking about interference, which is still in court and it's been. So how quickly should we embrace technology when there are hackers and there are issues, and we are a developing country, and America is grappling with that at the moment? Don't you think we should still stay manually and know that this is my thumb, I'm printing and you are seeing me?
Good question, Fisayo. I like this question really. But I think it comes back to what we mentioned at some point, that when we talk about democracy, there are some countries that really come to mind. You talk about United States of America, it talks about Canada, UK, Italy, and all that. But if you look at the real assessment record, the real assessment index of democracy, America is not the best democracy in the world. Incidentally, it's not the best, but it's the most popular. Okay, if you look at the largest democracy, which is India, but India is not the best democracy in the world. The best is probably Norway in terms of index.
Perhaps can that be as a result of a population? Because Norway is tiny compared to all these people.
No, it's not about population. There are so many indices, and the indices does not include population. It's about openness, inclusion, transparency, and some of those things we keep emphasizing in the electoral process. Okay, what is the level of participation? What is the level of engagement? America even fell, under Trump, because they believe that it's less engaging. It sounds like a dictator. With due respect, he comes, says one thing, and he moves on. He felt the record implemented under Donald Trump. So there are many yardsticks for measuring it, and that's why we are saying that whatever problems we're encountering now, it's not peculiar to us, because even the countries that we glorify, they are also still having their challenges. Okay, so it's a stage that we are in, and we'll get over it with time. But that's not to say that we should sit on our hours, that we should rest on our hours and say, after all, we're not the only ones facing the problem. We must continue to work at it so that we can improve on it and get to a reasonably appreciable pedestal. But having said that, we cannot begin to look at the problem of our innovation, and because of that problem, we'll say that we'll not advance to that.
No, why I'm being careful is that when the person who introduced it and with all his technology is still having problems, won't you wait for them to finish the car and drive it properly on the road before you begin to jump?
We can't wait, Fisayo. We can't wait. Because, it's a process. We can't wait. Because who affected their democracy?
Yeah.
Wasn't it Russia?
Yes.
Russia at the level of technology is very, of course, they're almost at par, Why was it not Nigeria that intervened in their
I'm afraid that if everything goes on computer basis, somebody might just do his own collation somewhere. Anyway,
but they are backups.
Yes, I need to interrogate a bit about this Norway example you were talking about. Good, yes. I'm looking at why Nigeria has to look at the Indias and the USs of this world because of the ethnic diversity, because of the multicultural nature of some of these societies. In terms of Norway, they are more or less the same people. They're Scandinavians, Nordic in nature. Well. Perhaps because of that, there's a common acceptance and then perhaps galvanization.
Homogeneous.
So is it a matter of perhaps because we are different peoples from different backgrounds and all, that is making our own a bit harder in terms of making, getting the common purpose together? I'm just trying to interrogate this, and perhaps you can give us some explanation.
No, very, very good interrogation, Professor. It's not really about that, Like I said, there are some indices, and those indices does not include the size of the nation. It's just about how open are you, how transparent are you, how free, how credible are you. These are some basic guidelines that you follow. America was very high at a stage, okay, under Ronald Reagan, under Bill Clinton, in terms of democratic interest. But it fell, like I said, towards the end of Obama's regime and dipped even further, okay, under Donald Trump. It's about number 21, or number 20 or number 21 now, in terms of index of good democracy. Okay, its democracy is classed now as flawed, just like India. Why is India also classed as flawed? Because there's less openness. But India is praised for being the largest democracy and for being able to manage it irrespective of all the violence, all the crisis, all the poverty, all the shenanigans that happens in that country. They are still commended for sustaining their democratic culture, even if it is not yet salutary. Okay, so our own, we compare ourselves with India, compare ourselves with America. Don't forget, apart from these two countries that were mentioned, Indonesia to Philippines, these are democracies, but different levels of democracies as well. And their own are still classed as flawed. Okay, we compare ourselves with these nations because we are also very diverse, we are multi-ethnic. America is an immigrant society, and to that extent is a multinational society. Okay, we have different nationalities, but they are managing it well. Look at the size of America, humongous size, the third largest nation in the world, or about the third, after China, India, you go to America, but the system is largely going on smoothly. They are still able to manage it, they are still able to run it. So we must give credit to them at that level. But even when we're giving credits, statistics still show that they are, as we're talking, below average in terms of adherence, in terms of meeting the basic standards of a democratic culture.
Yes, the AIG, one of the things that people have spoken about is response time. When there is an issue at a location and all that, in terms of getting, perhaps your special units to go there and perhaps douse tension and put the situation under control. How has it been in terms of response in yesterday's election?
Generally speaking, it was positive because according to the operation order of each command, there has to be a standby unit attached to every division that is meant for short deployment at short notice, should in case of any eventuality. Unless and if those officers on the ground have not complied with the order of the Inspector General of Police. But so far so good. For those incidences in Rivers, in Zamfara, in Benue, the response team actually responded positively, and some arrests were made to that effect.
A man was called to the ballot box, not this election, I think it was the last one, and said it looked like his own. Let me come to you, Grace, very briefly, and maybe you look at some of these the issues we were speaking about. Young ones coming up and all that. Have they been able to advertise their competence in any way? For instance, you have not held any position and you want us to trust you to go there and deliver. How do you canvass support for this kind of section of society to be given a chance?
For me, it's just to trust, place some form of trust on an individual and give that person an opportunity of a try before you can draw your conclusions, or you can, more like make your decisions, so to say. You can't conclude on an individual, like just seeing you've not held any form of elective or appointive position, and I look at you and just feel like probably you may not be able to deliver if I give it to you. You look at the track record of that individual over time. Has that individual been an accountable individual? Has he been, a person of integrity? Has that person built capacity over time? These are the things that you look at. And then you also give the person a benefit of doubt, or give the person an opportunity to build capacity even in the process while they're preparing. I look at the Nigerian youth and those who have, come out boldly and are ready to run. And it gives me so much pride and so much joy to see that, I used the word earlier, they are daring. They want to change the narrative. And it's a thing of pride for me. So you give them the opportunity and see how well they can deliver before you make your decisions, and I look at 2019 now, and for those who probably may not even get the opportunity to be elected or to be appointed, get ready for 2023.
All right.
Prepare yourself for 2023. I believe 2023 is that year of the youth.
Oh.
I'm so optimistic about it.
Okay, you're watching Nigeria Decides Studio on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. In the course of the day, of course, we will be going to the International Conference Center where the collation, of course, would be going on. Of course, we'll be hearing from that side. We also will be going to our centers across the country. I'll be getting reports from every part of Nigeria as far as the post-mortem of yesterday's election is concerned. We'll be doing analysis, news, reviews, previews, and interviews of the election process, and of course doing projections for the next one as well, as we wait to congratulate the winners as well, and of course encourage those who may not have made it. I have with me AIG Baba Tijani, AIG Zone 7, who has been giving us the security perspective of this whole process. Also with me, we have a senior lecturer at Department of Mass Communications at Abuja University. I'm talking about Dr. Abiodun Adeni, and of course, Grace Jerry. She is the convener of Access Nigeria campaign. She is also the executive director, Inclusive Friends Association, and Disability Votes Matter. That's, if you're just joining us, I needed to let you know exactly the caliber of guys we have in the house. And let me go quickly now to, Dr. Adeni. Doctor, we've spoken about several issues concerning elections in Nigeria. An aspect that people may also want to think about is perhaps, a cooperation amongst parties for development, not this PhD syndrome that's pull him down. Even if someone is not doing too well, encourage so that when you come on the platform, you can build on it. How do you see this playing out, in subsequent, in our democratic cycle?
We have to come to a better understanding of what the process is supposed to be. And I'm not sure we can overstate this point, really, that the people's interest should be the primary interest. And there are many routes to serving the people. If you can work in an agency, you can be a conscientious public official for 35 years or so, and still serve the people. You can be a committed private sector person for as long as possible and still serve the people. Okay, you can be a teacher and still serve the people. But generally, it is believed that if you want to serve a generality of the people much more than a regular profession will enable you to serve, you should come through leadership position. And the pedestal for attaining leadership position is politics. Okay, so if you are taking that route, then you should know that, there's a noble cause that you want to fulfill. That you are pursuing the cause for a greater glory, for humanity, for your nation, for your society. And that cause should definitely prepare you to underplay acrimony, okay? Acrimony and aggression. Because acrimony and aggression are things that are base. They are responses to our base instincts, which should be able to outgrow as people who want to be in leadership position. It is understandable to say that it is natural, for sometimes to lose it. But in losing it, you need to understand the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that you want to serve the people. So if I want to serve the people and you want to serve the people, and we are meeting on different pedestals, then why should we draw daggers against ourselves when we have a common objective? But it is a lie that is embedded in it. It is the hypocrisy that is embedded in it that bring up this deception, this kind of violence, this kind of acrimonious process that we are witnessing. Because if you belong to party B, belong to party A, we have a common objective. Just that we are saying we have different approaches. We're going to the market. There are different routes to the market, but the common objective is to get to the market. Okay? So if you are taking route A and I'm taking route B, then why should we be fighting ourselves in trying to get to our destination? There shouldn't be any reason, really. And that's the point we're making. We need to come to this understanding, that we have a society to work on. We have a nation to build. And in building that nation, our interests should be common. And to bring about that commonality of interest, okay, we have to be noble, we have to be peaceful, we have to be tolerant of each other. Sometimes it may not be easy to just preach these things and let it happen. There are some other institutional frameworks that we have to follow, and that what is here. One is law enforcement. The other one is example, leadership by precept. Okay, but law enforcement is key. We have more than enough laws in this country, and we have said over time that it's about implementation. So if you go against the grain of the law and you are apprehended, of course, people should be made to face, how do they put it? And people should be sanctioned appropriately, after following the regular due process. So by the time people are sanctioned, others coming behind will learn lessons. And in learning lessons, we are not building an institutional process. We are building an understanding. Then we can start questioning ourselves. Okay, because if you go, we have said it over time that we all travel to different parts of the world. We see how organized they are. We see how laws are working. Okay, but the moment, and when we get to those countries, we'll comply because we know that the laws are going to be implemented. But back here, we take things for granted. Okay, we take things for granted. So we need the institutions to be stronger and get us to comply, get us to organize ourselves, get us to be restrained. Okay, but who will make these institutions to work better? Leaders as well. And that's why we'll keep hoping that these elections that we're going through, we should pray to have quality leaders, the right leaders that will understand their onion. They will know that yes, they have a mission and they have a vision, and that vision is to put the people before themselves.
Let me ask you quickly, there's an aspect of this whole process that we, have had this discussion in the past, and it's this issue of politics as a profession. We've seen in some climes where you still have your job, and then you come and, and then perhaps it is because, a lot of people say it's because people see it as a full profession, how to feed the family, how to prepare for generations unborn, that you see a level of desperation as well as a lot of jostling for positions. If it were that you had your, primary jobs and all that, this might not be the case. Do you agree with this?
Yeah, I agree with that. And while you were saying that, I just put myself in perspective. I'm not running for any elective office yet, but then I am a Nigerian. I look at the system and I look at what is working and what is not working. And being an executive director of Inclusive Friends Association, it's an organization that we're keen on pushing the issues of disability to the forefront of, development in terms of advocacy, campaigns, action, and all of that. If, being an ED of Inclusive Friends is not, it's not giving me the opportunity to do much more as I would want. Well, being in, in the parliament, being in that seat of government, if that is what will propel the process and make it even faster, of course I would go for it. But it's not because it's a profession, but it's because I need to, devise means or arm myself with enough, ways and resources to be able to address an issue and address it as fast as, I can. If not for me as an individual, but I notice someone who, can be mentored, whose capacity can be built, who can be trained, who can be positioned, strategically to do this work, then we rally around that individual and push that person forward. Not because we are seeking for a profession or a career for that individual, but because we need an issue to be addressed immediately. And that's why we go for it. If we have a person with disability or group of persons with disabilities in the parliament, I am telling you that, you know, we would not be talking about exclusion, stigmatization, discrimination. It would be a thing of the past. It would have been curbed to an extent where, you know, the system of Nigeria would have been working now. Public buildings, there will be ramps everywhere. In terms of employment, there will be, you know, a quota, a position, or a certain percentage for people with disabilities. The educational system will be mainstreamed, and all of that. So for us is to go in and help push and facilitate the process to work faster, you know.
And if you let me add to, if you don't mind, if I add to what you say, there are superstars in developed countries. Yeah. You know, people with disability, they are superstars because of the kind of care.
Even in Nigeria,
get, you know. You know, so I'm just saying that in terms of government recognizes them and they give them maximum care. Yeah. You know, in fact, ironically, some people even want to have issues so that they can be cared for because they don't pay tax. Yeah. You know, they are cared for. If you have a structure, you don't have RAM, you are in trouble. It is outlawed. You know, so many grounds on which they are catered for. You know, and for them asking for some of these basic things, it's not asking for too much.
It's all right.
Yeah.
All right, let me understand that my colleague Mio Gidi will soon join us from the International Conference Center, where, of course, the National Collation Center there, we will be of course, Nigerians in the business end now. It's like an examination. The candidates have written the examination. The result sheet is what we are expecting. It is being marked, and so we get that shortly. Of course, we get feelers from there, and we know exactly what is happening and what to expect in the course of the day. Let me come to AIG Zone 7. I also understand that not too long a time we will be releasing you for other duties as the post-election activities continue. But what will be your word to your men? They've done well, according to you, of course, yesterday. Now, looking at the next election, of course, we're looking at another one in the fortnight. What are the lessons from this that you're carrying forward?
Well, we have experienced some challenges in terms of ballot box snatching, vote buying, like the one in Bauchi. We are going to re-strategize, lecture the men on these shortcomings and ensure that it doesn't happen again.
All right, you mean, how would police do this? Or unless it's according to what they had in Ekiti the last time, it was this see and buy syndrome. Let me come to you. How do you, you know, perhaps discourage the police, you know, discourage voters and, you know, from doing, you know, participating in something like this?
You mean vote buying?
Yes, vote buying, and even, you know, positioning yourself. Several people go to polling centers to actually look for, you know, who will buy their votes.
Yes. You know, Fisayo, there's a short and long-term measure. The long-term measure is to be concerned about developing our system so that the thing that the average voter thinks he can use 5,000 naira, 2,000 naira to do will be provided by the state, okay, by the government. What the politician is taking advantage of is the absence of these things. The politician is trying to fill a void between what the government or the state should be doing and the expectation of the people, okay, by providing for the people pittance that will take him or her nowhere. So that's the long-term measure. The long-term measure is for government, for the state to be much more responsive, to provide social amenities, infrastructures and utilities that the average citizen needs. You know, if that is provided, they will look away from gratifications, momentary gratifications that will take them nowhere. Long term. Then in the short term, of course, the agencies will have to come in. Okay, the security agencies will have to come in. Okay, it can also be tough because some of them too can get compromised. Okay, so we have to look at it from a general picture. But again, we only admonish them to be much more committed, to be much more conscientious, and understand that they are not representing themselves, but they are representatives of the state, and they have a duty to perform on behalf of the state. The state relies on them, you know, to bring about peace and to guide our morality, even in this respect. Okay, that's a short-term measure. And of course, I've seen very impressively, I've seen EFCC, for instance, advertising in places and saying, if you have a report, financial inducement or something, send to so and so numbers. And I think I've had police warning too against some of these things. Even if we are not going to achieve it effectively at this time, we are building consciousness against these kind of practices. The fact that we are building consciousness, we are creating awareness around it. And the average politician will know that it is wrong for him to commodify an otherwise dignified process. And the average voter at some point will also understand that he's doing a disservice to him or herself, receiving money rather than looking forward to service from the politician.
Today is post-election day one, Grace. And of course, some of the issues that emanated from yesterday's elections was the crisis in Rivers State. Election violence, no doubt about that. How do we, what do we take away from Rivers? What have we learned from Rivers that we can begin to, guard against as we continue to proceed, as we proceed in this our democratic journey?
All right. First, I'm glad that the AIG mentioned they would have to call back, the force and begin to more like reorientate or retrain and prepare for March 9th, and possibly maybe if there's going to be yes, in Rivers and in probably in Lagos. I don't know about that. So I'm glad that it from now to 9th, it gives an opportunity to begin to work on to better, especially the security, to arm themselves even more in terms of preparedness to how to tackle the issues of this violence and ballot box snatching and all of that. Overall, I would say that there is need to improve on whatever it is that has happened, today. And the issue of Rivers is becoming like a prevalent, a recurring thing. It's something that needs to be addressed as quick as possible, because rivers keep popping up. It's about time. It's whatever it is dealt with. Because if this keeps happening, now we didn't even anticipate that Lagos would follow suit in terms of violence. It came as a surprise, to everybody. Because relatively, like Doctor mentioned, it's been peaceful everywhere. But from nowhere, even if Rivers is expected, so to say, Lagos wasn't expected. So you need to nip it in the bud immediately, but Rivers most especially, something needs to be done.
AIG, what can be the reason for Lagos, for instance? As she rightly mentioned, it's not where we normally, associate with so much widespread thuggery of violence. What could have been the reasons for this?
Lagos is a very populous state. There is no any state as populous as Lagos. But however, we are working on intelligence to find out why this thing emanated in Lagos this time around. So the report is yet to come.
Okay. I need to come to you, Doctor. We've seen this. Another aspect is the fact that we now have parallel INECs on the different platforms on social media posting results, all kinds of parallel INEC. They will give you the word, the name, the parties and all. And then we have fake news circulating. Some are even jubilating. Some have killed one or two, animals to begin to celebrate victory. How do we check this?
Oh, that's a tough one, really. First of all, we need to appreciate the fact that this social media, this digital media, has also made awareness fluid. It has helped in the quick passage, speed of light passage of information. And whether you like it or not, it has also helped in raising political awareness. Okay, this voter turnout that she spoke about earlier, part of the reason is because of this free flow of information, very quick and all that. But like everything in life, everything has the good and the negative side. The negative side of it is what we're talking about now, where you see fake news. Somebody can just sit down somewhere and post lies just to cause confusion, all kinds of propaganda, all kinds of spinning. And
then somebody picks it up and it's circulating.
It's very unfortunate. But there are two things I think we need to do. One is media literacy. You begin to take every information you get with a pinch of salt. It's not everything that comes to you. Then you now begin to celebrate and think that, oh, it is right. You start discussing it. You say, did you not hear what happened? It's there on social media. You need to take a second look at it. You need to be circumspect about every information that comes to you. You know, there are different kinds of media, really. You know, if I see anything on NTA, I'm much more likely to believe it, if I'm maybe 95%, than the one I see on an internet, online media that is not regulated. So we need to have this media literacy consciousness.
Maybe before the end of the program, I'll convince you to make it 100%.
Okay, but maybe I'm not feeling, you know. So if we have that understanding, then we can deal with it. Then the other one is the more structural formal education. An educated person, there are certain things that you throw at an educated person and they will look at this and know this is not possible. He just dismisses it because you know that it's not possible. So this consciousness have to come to us. You know, I've been seeing, like you said, I've been seeing so many of these posts from yesterday. One said, so and so person has lost a Senate seat and all that. How did you know? It's almost even impossible because the elections have just been concluded and you are saying that somebody has won or lost. You know, it's not fair, really. But what can you do? Because what can the police do or the local efforts? To what extent can they go to correct these things? Because most of there's a crisis of jurisdiction already. Most of these things may not even be posted on the shores of this country. So are you going to send the police or the army to go to the United States and meet somebody who is posting rubbish from there because he wants to affect the electoral process in Nigeria? Crisis of jurisdiction, a problem, very serious problem. What we need to do is just to be circumspect about the information that we receive and how we process them. Okay? Media literacy, structural education. Then you begin to resolve it, really. But anyone that tends towards criminality, there are ways of dealing with it. We have seen the police in America and the UK dealing with people, okay, because of offenses committed online. Somebody said, I'm going to kill Donald Trump somewhere on Facebook in America. And the police was right at her door at some point. You know, in the UK too, it happens. You know, but in extreme cases, we can deal with them, we can investigate. And of course, you will attest to it. There are ways in which police can track online crime. You know, and they are doing it in some cases. So we are on. You were on, you know, these things can be dealt with, but we need to understand that it's not all information that comes to us that we should hold as credible. You know, you see, this thing is just saying that we should guard against, we should be prepared because it's going to continue. It's not going to stop. We can't make it stop. It's going to continue. But in knowing that it's going to continue, we have to also be on the defensive to protect ourselves and our sanity.
AIG, I need to come to you. There's a plethora of platforms on the internet. Is there any way, at least there's some kind of cyber vigilance so that it can act as a crisis forewarning? If you know that, okay, some kind of, you see some kind of traffic and some kind of, you know, maybe you have some flags that you can be alerted if there are some, you know, cyber information that may not be patriotic.
Well, there is a department in the force that is dealing with these cyber crimes, etc. And they are working on it, and I hope they will improve soonest.
Perhaps can it be stopped from the level of even the resolve of the human being to say, okay, I want to truncate this system even from my laptop?
You know, when he was speaking earlier, it took my mind back to something that happened, I think, during the Ebola era.
Yes.
You know, when somebody just posted people should wake up by midnight and bath with salt, you know, ingest salt and all of that. And we saw the kind of havoc that caused because lives were lost. Overall, you know, it caused a bit of some form of damage at that period. I think Nigerians should have learned their lessons, you know, from such experiences and not be quick to jump on, you know, decisions, like he said, until it comes up on NTA. Until it pops up on, and you know, on like CNN or AIT or channels. Sometimes I think you should hold back and verify the source. First, verify the source. Is it true? Is it from the right channel? You know, and all of that. And if you see it pop up on social media, I think you can quickly Google, you know, NTA, Google channel, Google AIT to see, is it true? Google Daily Trust, Google Leadership, and see, confirm it before you make your decision. What I'm saying is overall, this probably will not even stop. It may reduce, but it won't stop, you know. Overall, let me use Nigerians as a typical example. We're just happy and lively people. We can turn the most hardest situation into a joke. And we can turn the, you know, joke into some serious cases. This might not stop over time, but it's for you as an individual to do your findings well before you draw your conclusions on an issue. Whether, you know, PDP is leading, whether APC is leading, whether ANN is leading, do your findings before you begin to either retweet or repost some of this, thing, or call somebody and start jubilating, or, start up a barbecue. It's have to do your findings, verify.
All right. Looking at this, development, we continue to talk about, elections and the acrimony, the bad blood that it brings, and one thing that, has not particularly helped is that sometimes those who perpetrate this violence or whose supporters perpetrate this violence eventually find themselves in office as a result of what they have done. So perhaps there's some reward for them in doing this. How do we, sensitize the public in terms of orientation to not make it a profitable business for some of these politicians?
Very well. I think we spoke this earlier, but it's also okay for us to expand it. It comes to the fact that we have rules and regulations, we have laws. Any system that is not governed by law is a banana republic. It's probably like the proverbial Hobbesian state. We have regulations, we have laws. We should be much more concerned about implementation of these laws. Okay, and the civilized democracies that we talk about every day, that we try to copy, there's nothing sacrosanct, there's nothing outstanding about them, other than the fact that laws work, the laws rule. Okay, how to what extent do we go in this country trying to implement our laws? They're not. We're not really bothered. Men rather rule in our own system. Okay, you look at. Unfortunately, the size of the person's pocket, the kind of influence the person has, you privilege this over the letters of the law. It's unfortunate. It's something that is historic, and it's something we should begin to guide as we go along. Laws is an ass. You shouldn't know anybody. Okay, if we implement the laws as strictly as possible, people will begin to deter themselves from committing wrong. Okay, so why would somebody, for instance, perpetrate violence to get to a seat of power? If we have a strong system that is able to sieve the histories of people, their personality, such people will not get into those positions in the first place. If we have an effective regulatory process, some people will find it difficult to get to those kind of positions. But let me say something again. There's a silver lining in the process. In 1999, it was worse than this. If you look at the class of people in the National Assembly those days, it was, with every due respect to many of them, they were people with questionable character. But eventually, the level of the quality of their character started improving because people started asking questions. The media was busy exposing them. This was a drug pusher before. This one has no complete certificate. This one has no this. Then gradually people started becoming very conscious. I want to go and contest. Then let me tidy up this aspect. People started behaving themselves. And these days you see people being very careful with what they do, especially on the digital media, knowing that it can get to the public place and they don't even know what their future is going to hold for them. If in the future they get into public position, somebody can just come and expose them. So that consciousness is increasing, okay, and we are getting better. I will continue to say this. It's not. We're not yet at the stage that we are now, but we're not doing badly. We're getting better, really. Yeah.
I will still ask you the same question, but let me start from Grace. We focused a lot on the presidential election coming to Saturday. A lot of the focus was on the presidential election. But that was not the only game in town yesterday. There was the National Assembly, the Red Chamber, the Senate, and of course the Green Chamber, which is the House of Reps, and that's a whooping 360 seats that were up for grabs yesterday. In your analysis, if you look at how things run, do you think they were a bit under the radar and perhaps many of them will benefit from the popularity of the presidential candidates of their party to just coast home instead of their own credentials?
Well, I'm not going to say much about it because I don't know so much. But I just know that the focus was just too much on the presidential, that I saw people even asking, the senatorial election, who are the people, who are the candidates? Even for the House of Reps, who are the candidates? It looks like Nigerians even know who those other people are because the focus was more on the presidential. And you gave me some form of concern, like everything prepared in terms of preparedness and knowing who to vote for. Everything should run at the same time. Knowing who you want to vote for as a president, knowing who you want to vote for as a senator, or, you know, you need to know. Nigerians need to know. And the question I ask myself is that wasn't there enough in terms of publicity, campaign? Didn't they push themselves out there enough? Because people actually didn't know. A few people I met were asking, who am I even going to vote for? So it's possible they just thumbprinted on just anyone on anywhere.
I need to ask you this same question. Yes. You know, do you think, you know, the popularity of the main candidates could rub off on those running for Senate and, you know, the House of Reps, because they were a bit under the radar, according to, of course, Grace's...
You know what it is? What I think it is, Fisaya, is that presidential politics in Nigeria is a very powerful politics. The president wears a lot of influence because we are running a presidential democracy. You know, in the presidential democracy, the presidents are very powerful. He makes the most appointments, distributes the greatest largesse, you know, creates the greatest opportunities. So whoever is going to be the president is always a subject of prime interest anywhere in the world in a presidential democracy. And our own cannot be different. That's what we witnessed yesterday. You know, and interestingly, we have an incumbent running and a challenger. So it cannot be less influential, as it were. But that's not to say that we should undermine the intellectual arm of government, which is the legislature, you know, where debates take place, where processes and procedures emanating from the executive are examined and re-examined.
Some say it is the heart of democracy.
It is, of course, it's the difference between dictatorship and democracy. You know, if we don't have a legislature, then we don't have a democracy. That's actually the heart. It's the springboard around which democracy revolves. So, but it's unfortunate that the National Assembly election came with the presidential election. Even irrespective of the importance of the National Assembly election, you know, you will still privilege the presidency over the legislature in any democracy. So they came together. You know, the one that is much more influential had to take precedence over this other one. So what can we do? If it was staggered, for instance, we will have seen a greater attention being paid to the National Assembly as well. As we are talking now, people are not even looking at who is winning Senate or House of Reps. People are looking at waiting for Buhari and Atiku. You know, that's the unfortunate aspect of it. But maybe we are not going to ask INEC to start staggering it because we want to give greater importance.
That will make it more expensive.
It will make it more expensive. The procedures will be longer. Like she said, alluded to, you know, perhaps we should be concerned about creating increased awareness as well. As we are increasing awareness, as we are giving awareness to the presidency, let all the stakeholders, INEC, the political parties, let them also join in raising awareness around the National Assembly election. Because it's a very important election as well. You cannot start complaining about the character of National Assembly members when you didn't participate in electing them. You know, so these people, that's why I say that when we criticize them sometimes, we have been unfair because they are a reflection of the Nigerian society. Did they come from the skies, huh? Did they come from the moon? They are products of the Nigerian society. You know, so they are a reflection in a way, so you cannot stand and be criticizing them when you are not part of the process that took them there. Okay, so that's the argument.
Really. We will still come back to that. AIG, I need to ask you this. We've spoken about how stretched you are and all that. But some people might worry that during elections, especially general elections at that, having so many officers stretched thin with other sister agencies focusing strictly on the ballots, focusing strictly on the elections, the polling units, won't every other policing activities suffer, especially when you have calculating, you know, members, you know, calculating thugs or, you know, little burglars are thinking about, okay, there's no policeman here. These officers are, you know, unprotected at the moment. Can we take advantage of that? Are you thinking about that or other services as well?
Usually on such kind of special assignment, there's what we call an operational order. The operational order exhumes men in a particular place and assigns them for a special duty, while leaving others for a routine normal policing. So we don't have any conflict about that.
You agree with me that if you go around town, many places looked a bit deserted. Don't you think they are vulnerable?
Not really deserted. There are policemen around. It's only maybe you have not taken sight to see where they are.
Yeah.
same vein, what usually happens is that those on normal routine police duties, their hours of duty is being extended, let's say from 8 hours to 24 hours or 48 hours, depending on the nature of the special duty on the ground. But however, the Bible of the operation is the operation order. So everything is explicit and written in the operation order. Therefore, we don't usually have this kind of problem in terms of shortage of manpower or not covering particular areas.
These assignments in terms of deployment, especially to voting centers, is it flexible? Or, for instance, officers and men that have been posted to other states and all that, when do they begin to return? Is there any specific timing or is it flexible?
Well, according to the operation order, there is what we call command. Command is the last part of the operation order because the operation order has 5 parts: situation, mission, execution, administration, and command. Under the command, there's what we call timing. So the stand-down order will come from him, or else everybody continues the assignment and stay put where he is.
I'm the presenter of this program, but for now, you can't stand down. You are still with us, sir. Let me go to Grace very quickly. With this, people think that, of course, when you see physically security men, that gives confidence, especially in areas where you've had crises in the past and all that. But what else can you do, perhaps, to begin to, give people confidence to participate? Because if you see a situation like you saw in Rivers yesterday, it could affect, what could happen in a fortnight. People may not want to come out. They don't want to be, in the way of stray bullets or perhaps become victims of what, they are not a part of. How do you, perhaps bring back the enthusiasm for this process?
Generally, I would say that Nigerians are people who, they are enthusiastic. And whatever it is cannot keep them down for a long time. Nigerians are typical of just, springing back up and, bouncing back and trying, a system or a process all over again. I want to believe that people will still turn out. I saw a video yesterday of a lady who was screaming, "They are burning our ballot paper, look at it burning." As much as she was running, she was still filming. A typical person who is scared would want to run for safety first. But because she needed that information to be out, she needed Nigerians to be informed, to be aware of what is happening. It just shows that a typical Nigerian is enthusiastic. And no matter how much the magnitude of the situation, it still doesn't stop them from wanting to. That's just the fate that I have in a Nigerian. I believe they would still come out.
Do you agree? Do you told the same line, especially when you go to a voting center and you find out that even the faces of the youths milling around is not the most inviting? Would you want to return?
Yeah, why not? If I see a level of security presence there, sometimes when you see security men around in a place like that, it heartens you, like you said. You feel a sense of protection. That's why it's not all the places that they were deployed yesterday that we had crime. But the essence of security presence, the essence of the presence of men in uniform in some places is just to deter the crime. Sometimes when you see them, even if you have some evil intention, you caution yourself. You now hold back, especially when you see them with arms. These people are here. Except the deadly criminals that will still there and still go ahead and do what they want to do. In some other societies, we'll see policemen, security people patrolling the streets. When they are patrolling, it's not because they've been told that a crime has occurred in so and so place, but just the mere sighting of these people can be deterring. Okay, and it is good that we have acknowledged that many of the stations yesterday, all of them were properly policed. They were properly secured to a very large extent. So if anybody still thinks that he can go ahead and dare them or go ahead and commit violence or go ahead and pervert a process that a lot more people are happy with, where people are exercising their franchise, when people are happy with that, they are now able to reassert their citizenship, by voting. Good luck to the person, but the onus again is on our law enforcement agency, to be up and doing like they did yesterday, and make sure that they nip any criminal intention in the bud. The nation does not belong to any particular individual or interest group, like we keep saying. We have an oath to the state, and we have an oath to the future of this country. All hands definitely have to be on deck to make sure that this electioneering process pulls through successfully.
You're still watching Nigeria Decides. As I told you earlier, we will, once we have the signal, be joining my colleague at the International Conference Center, that's Mio Gidi. I'll be telling us exactly what is happening in terms of collation and the general lineup for the day. Of course, Nigerians are waiting for what you said is some results very important to the next 4-year cycle of how the ship of state will be run. We all are looking forward to that. And of course, in the course of this conversation, we would also try to link up with our various network centers across the country to do a post-mortem of activities in those areas, especially concerning yesterday's elections. And of course, we'll be linking up with some of our reporters in the field as well to tell us exactly how things would unfold today and how, of course, they saw what happened yesterday from different zones. Of course, it is the largest television network in Africa as well. The spread would tell you exactly that. And in the course of the day, we intend to prove that once again by showing you exactly the spread of the country with our reporters on site, telling you exactly what is happening. I have with me, of course, 3 people who have looked at this elections from 3 different perspectives. We started with women, we've spoken about them, we've talked about the youths, we've talked about the veterans, and the people with disabilities. But there is, it seems to me, Doctor, that there's a bit of decline in the ages of people. It seems as if the younger ones want to make their presence felt this time, especially in the Senate. People are coming out to say, let's give it a run.
Yeah, again,
they may not have the money.
Yeah, but it's a statement for the future, and I think she talked about it much earlier. It's a statement they are making for the future. Okay, we have 73 or 72 presidential aspirants. And out of those something, only two of them are very prominent. And the majority of those presidential aspirants are people who you can class as youths, So they're just coming out to try to redefine the process and say, okay, the age of geriatrics should be going, that this is not, we shouldn't be a gerontocratic system. We are also very capable, we have the ability. And do not forget that everything that powers us in modern world, are innovations. Innovations come on an everyday basis. Okay, and people who are in the better position to understand innovation are actually the youths, because they are young at heart. By the time you are over 50, there are certain things that may not be interesting to you anymore. You begin to look at it, you begin to say, oh, my child is there. Hey, come and do this thing for me. That is how it works really, not just at the family level, but more importantly at the larger societal level. Quite a number of them have come. We have Kingsley Moghalu, Omoyele Sowore, Bengala Kwashim, and Fela Durotoye. Many of these people have come. It doesn't matter whether they win or lose this time, but they are making statements for the future. These are leaders of tomorrow. They are trying to define the future as long as they remain consistent. And if they keep the focus, there's nothing wrong with it.
All right, AIG Babajidani has been here. You have an assignment. We will soon let you go. Final words on the police concerning this election and the one we have in a fortnight. What would you want to tell Nigerians concerning the security aspect of the elections, especially with the one we have in the next 2 weeks?
Well, for now, we are on the post-election of the Presidential and National Assembly. We have provided enough security at all the collection centers right now, as it is happening in most of the states and including at the national level here in Abuja. We are investigating all the cases on the ground as per the offenses that were committed. And we are now creating a platform of intelligence to ensure that what happened previously will not happen again in the next coming elections. And similarly, we are going to draw another new operational order in respect of the oncoming gubernatorial election that is coming up.
AIG Babajidani, according to the program order, you can now stand down, sir. Thank you very much. Let's go on a short break. We will be back. All right, you're welcome back to the Nigeria Decide studio. Dr. Adeni is still right here with us, and we still have the pleasure of Grace Jerry, convener Access Nigeria campaign. Of course, we'll also be joined by more analysts in the course of the day. As I told you earlier, we'll be going to all the centers as we continue to do a postmortem of the elections and project to future elections as well. Some perhaps aspects that we may be thinking about perhaps is for health services, you know, in elections like this, the logistics for health. Because when you go out and go through processes like this, one would expect that there will be first aid and some other access to some help, because the nature of the human body is that sometimes many of these conditions you may not be aware until you put your body under some strain. How have you seen our responses and our preparation concerning that aspect of the elections?
No, of course, you say that there's still much to be done. You know, even before elections, there are so many instances where you expect that our public health service will respond appropriately, but they're falling short of standards, you know, and we'll continue to make comparisons, unfortunately, with what happens in other parts of the world, you know. In some countries, they are bothered about the response time, not the question of response at all. You know, if you can be in your house and something will happen, all you need to do is to dial 911 or 999, depending on the number and depending on the country, and 5 minutes after, okay, the ambulance is right in the front of your house, you know, asking questions, you know, with complete army or complete group of paramedics, you know, ready to attend to you. And if it's something they cannot deal with immediately, they take you straight to the hospital. So what they are concerned about in those crimes is not that whether or not those things are available or it's not available, but even the time. Some people say 5 minutes is too long. Let's make it 3 minutes response time. Let's make it 2 minutes response time. Okay? And against that background, you see that in public events, maybe football matches and all that, you see ambulances all over the world, all over the place. All these things are ready, preparing to respond just in case there's an emergency. You know, in our own situation too, there's nothing is saying that we cannot provide these. Perhaps we may say that we don't have enough money, you know, but we'll see private organizations, private hospitals ready to provide ambulances. But you know, how many people can afford private hospitals? That's why we're saying that government should be much more responsive, you know, so not just in terms of providing quality emergency services through general hospitals, public health facilities for the populace, but through episodic events, you know, ad hoc events like elections, you know, and public shows and events as well, you know, because any society that undermines the value of the health of its citizenry, it's not a society that is worth its salt, you know. It's something that we need to put in mind, really. We need to, even if we cannot afford an ambulance in every police unit, we can begin to graduate it and say, okay, this ambulance to 20 polling units, this number of ambulance to so and so number of polling units, you know, so that people will feel a sense of care, okay? People will feel a sense of concern, and people will begin to appreciate the state and appreciate the fact that we have government, we have a responsive state. You know, by the time people have this feeling, this sense of appreciation, this sense of care, you also find out that their level of patriotism, their level of nationalism will increase. It is very easy for us to say this individual is unpatriotic. There are reasons for it, okay? Even if we are not justifying it, but we're saying that we can create a better ground for patriotism, we can create a better ground for nationalism if state institutions are made much more responsive. And in this case, the health sector, and in the specific case of election that we're talking about, by being helpful to people who can be susceptible to a failed health. These things are unpredictable. We need to be on the guard so that we'll not so that people will not be falling down and dying like chickens.
Your postmortem of yesterday's elections, from your perspective of experience, I understand, of course, we will soon also allow you to go, but we need you to give us your own postmortem, your own assessment of looking at all the services, the turnout of voters, the response of security agencies, and the general, enthusiasm of Nigerians to determine their future, at least for the next 4 years.
Okay, I would first give it to the whole of Nigerians. The fact that, the process didn't, the postponement and, the delay in terms of starting the process at the polling unit still didn't discourage them. Up until 7 p.m. in some places I heard, people were still voting. I would like to give it to them for that. And to also say to INEC, kudos to INEC, because they actually have done a lot of, they've tried their best to ensure that, we have a free, fair and a credible election. And talking about, coming up with new innovations, especially for people with disabilities, I would give it to them, because I would say that in one way or the other, whether it didn't work as much as expected or not, Nigeria has made history. INEC has helped, to create that history. And in terms of security, I would say it subsequently should be beefed up. If there could be more deployments, especially to some of those flash, point areas, places like Rivers or maybe Lagos, or anywhere there's this, there's a little, probably like a rumor of, it being heightened. There should be more deployment of, the security there, because the life of every Nigerian matter. One life does matter. So there is a need to protect these people while they carry out their civic duty. It's important that people don't lose lives or people don't become disabled as a result of violence or any form of insecurity.
In your experience, Dr. Adeni, which elections results normally come last? Perhaps some say because of the terrains and all that. And in your past assessment, which elections, which results normally come late and which ones come early?
Oh, you mean states, right?
Yes.
In terms of state, I think those ones with the largest population usually come last. I think last in 2015, Kano was about one of the last to come. First of all, it's dependent on population. Secondly, location. This one in far distances, like rivers. Rivers is complicated. In some areas, you cannot access them by land. You have to go through water. In Bayelsa too. So those things can delay collation time. So population, number of registered voters, region, depending on terrain, and all of that. And of course, in this situation, if there are disputes, and INEC, probably I'm hearing reports that INEC has postponed election in some places or cancelled, it might also create some delay. And so we can be making projections in our own room and say, okay, this person is going to win, that person is going to win. But finally, the one that will be most reliable would be the one that will come from INEC. And as it is, we may not be having that until around.
Like you said earlier, some already have tabulated and collated in their on their desktops at home. Yes. Even the ballot box that was burnt, some people counted it. We understand that Ibadan will soon come on. They are getting ready to come on. We'll be linking them shortly. They are on alert to, of course, give us the situation report in Ibadan zone. But before we go to the pace setup, I need you to at least tell us a bit about, your experience as a voter. Yes, you are, you're an intellectual, you look out, but as a voter, what feeling does it leave you with? You have put your thumb there, and then you are going on. What feeling, how do you feel at the end of it?
Yeah, it has so many implications for the psychology. Psychologically, you feel a sense of self-importance. You feel a sense of citizenship, and you have a very strong sense of belonging, okay? And apart from having a sense of belonging, you also have a strong sense of association when you see people around you, and that association can also can be expanded to the level of a community and nationalism. So it works at different levels, really, as a voter. That's why the PVC card is theoretically a very important card, because it defines your citizenship, it defines your esteem, and permits you to participate in a process that is already supposed to be involving and participatory, and gives you the feeling that, that leader may be pulling past you with siren blaring cars. That leader may now be lording himself over you, but you have a right over him one way or the other. And that right is expressible in your vote.
How about you? How do you feel when you go through the experience, you eventually put your finger on that ballot paper and then you wrap it and you put it in, and as you leave, what does it,
quickly, I'm going to tell a bit of my story, and I think that is what, very short, that is what has even informed this that I'm doing today. I think it was, earlier when the whole, PVC, continuous voter registration process started. I was quick to, go and get mine. But immediately I got to the registration center, there was a gutter between me and those who were, registering. And I was, of course, on a wheelchair. I looked at that gutter and I thought about how do I cross over to that side, because it was a beehive of activity registration and nobody paid attention to me. And so I turned back and I went home. I said probably I'll come back the next day or two and maybe they would bring it to my side or have people lift me, cross me over this big gutter to the other side. I came back a day or two later, it was still the same experience, and I remember I didn't have to, I didn't go through the registration process. And I sat one day and I thought about, this is my experience and probably a lot of other persons with disabilities out there, that these barriers have stopped them from registering. And that informed, my advocacy. I began to use myself as an evidence. How can I create a system where it's easier for people with disabilities to register and get their permanent voter, card? And eventually the process was made easier, especially for me, because I was able to enter into the INEC office with very little or no barrier. And when I finally got my PVC, I wanted to just hang it on my neck. Like I just wanted the whole world to know that, now I have the right to vote as a citizen. It gives that very good feeling. And I saw people yesterday actually taking a lot of pictures with the ink on their finger. It's more like, it's a thing of pride for every Nigerian, because they're showing you the ink, they're showing you their cuticles stained, and so on and so forth. It's a thing of pride. For me, I haven't voted in a while because I've been observing elections, over and over and over, but I am looking forward to also showing everybody my ink-stained finger.
While people were using their thumbs and, index finger, and some other people were using their fist.
Yes, you always have that. That's it tells you about plurality of society and the fact that intentions are always different, and we cannot all be the same. And they say in local parlance, we cannot all sleep and have our head in one direction. We face different sides, but that's where the law comes in. If you go against the grain of thought, against regulation, the law is there to deal with you, and that's why we're talking about implementation. Okay, you are not invited to use fist on this occasion. You are invited to use your finger.
Any of your fingers,
so if you think that you want to be smarter or you think that you understand better than the rest of us, then the law will come in and deal with you.
You spoke about technology.
Yeah.
In concrete terms, how can it help? For instance, INEC Collation. INEC Collation, how can it really help? Let me give that question. Let me address that question to Grace. Okay, collation, apart from the process itself, the collation. How can technology help in terms of quick tabulation? Maybe instead of carrying the ballot boxes directly, some tabulation at the places and sending or whatever. Is there any way that you've seen in other climes?
I think you're the expert here. You should address that, I think.
The expert is actually the expert is actually the information expert and all that. But we have ideas anyway. We have ideas. But I can also ask him that question back. I can say that, why is it that they can go to Lagos and withdraw money from a bank account that is domiciled in Abuja?
Yeah.
So it's very true. How can you be in the UK and use your card that is domiciled in Lagos?
Access money. Or sit in the comfort of your home and send money to someone.
All right.
It's all the same thing, yeah.
Grace, Jerry, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you, and perhaps we'll also still call you in the course of Nigeria Decides as we look forward to the eventual collation and, of course, announcements of results, and, of course, another set of elections in a fortnight. We are going to Ibadan very shortly, but before I go, let me quickly leave you with this one. There was a talk about, a center, the AIG has left now, and they said, what happened? Why are you disenfranchised? They said a native doctor came and everybody ran away. All right, let's go to Ibadan. Kemi Akinwande is there. We are just enjoying coffee here. Would have preferred Amala and Egbegiri this morning, but of course, you are doing that on that side. It's over to you, Kemi, and tell us exactly what's happening that way.
Fisayo, well, we're really enjoying Amala here. You might decide to join us in Ibadan for a plate of Amala. We have it ready for you. Thank you for joining us in Ibadan. Casting of ballot is over and collation of results from the 33 local government areas of Oyo State is still ongoing and, of course, across the country. The voters are waiting earnestly for the final results. Meanwhile, as collation continues, what are the issues at stake? Will the electorate and politicians accept the results when they are out in good faith? Why do the masses take delight in sending out unverified information and spread fake news that can propel violence? These are some of the issues on our front burner at Ibadan Network Center. And with me to do justice to the issues is a psychologist from University of Ibadan, Professor Inyeto Shenge. Prof, it's glad to have you once again in our studios here in Ibadan.
Thank you, Kemi, and good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, viewers.
Let's get update from collation centers from our correspondents there. Results from the various collation centers for the presidential and National Assembly elections are being awaited in Oyo State office of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Ibadan. Correspondent Lukman Hassan, who kept vigil, is on ground to give us an update.
We kept vigil in the collation center within the state office of the Independent National Electoral Commission, awaiting results from various collation centers across the state. But up at this moment, no result has yet been brought to the state office of the Independent National Electoral Commission. People are still awaiting the results from the various collation centers in the state. As a report says, elections were held up to late last night due to the late takeoff of election in some areas within Ibadan and outside Ibadan in Oyo State. We keep our abreast as events unfold from the collation center within the premises of the Independent National Electoral Commission here in Ibadan. It's back to you in the studio.
As the final collation centers at various senatorial districts opens, results are still coming in from local government collation centers. From Oyo Central Senatorial District, Kemyoshi reports that results from 11 local governments are still being awaited this morning. Let's join her for details.
Here at the final collation center for Oyo Central Senatorial District in Moniya, Ibadan. And we have been here keeping vigil all through the night. And by daybreak this morning, results are still coming in trickles from local government collation centers. I have with me here some of the party agents. What can you say about this exercise so far?
Election exercise started yesterday, and from my observations, the election was very peaceful. But there are certain issues here and there whereby elections were delayed. Election materials didn't reach some of our polling booths on time.
I also have here Bola Akinyemi. What do you think is responsible for the delay in this result collation? Because having been here since last night.
I think only INEC can explain that. Because having been here since 10 p.m. yesterday night, I was thinking we ought to be home by now. So I don't know, only INEC can explain the delay.
And the Dr. Tunde Abisoye here is the agent for Action Democratic Party.
The idea of it not commencing is not the case, but it has not been concluded. That appears to be the correct concept. in that we've been having results coming in from various units and subsections of the local government. The election regarding senatorial status are being expected from 11 local governments. So until those local governments turn in their results, the collation can't be concluded. So that is the stage where we are. So the collation is still ongoing across the 11 local governments.
You heard him. Out of about 11 local governments, only Akinyele local government results seems to have come in. Although no official of INEC or collation officer is willing to make comment on this, but we do hope that as the results come in and the collation continues, you will have more details from this collation center. I am Kemi Yoshi, handing you back to the studio.
Now, a report just reaching us says suspected hoodlums broke into the office of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, in Oriade local government area of Osun State in the early hours of this Sunday. The attackers were said to have first opened fire to scare away officials of the commission and party agents before seizing ballot boxes, thumb-printed ballot papers, and setting them on fire. And we'll come back to Ibadan. Oyeyinka Omole is at Ibadan North Local Government Collation Center, where she files in this report.
Thank you, studio. It's been a very long night here. Both the gentlemen of the press, party observers, and other stakeholders have been keeping vigil at this collation center, where 3 different results are expected to be collated. These to include the result for presidential election in Ibadan North local government, Oyo South senatorial district results from 9 different local government areas, and the result for Ibadan North federal constituency. As at now, 6 in the morning, for Ibadan North presidential results, only Ward 6, Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 7, and Ward 9 have brought their results from the ward level. While for Oyo South senatorial districts, where they are expecting about 9 local government areas to bring their results to this collation center, 21 political parties are vying for Oyo South senatorial district. They are still been expecting other results. I'm talking about the House of Reps in Ibadan North federal constituency. 5 wards have equally brought their results for collation. That's the situation for now. I will continue to keep you posted as events unfold. I will now return you back to the studio. I'm Oyeyinka Omole.
Another report just reaching us say out of 13 local government for Oyo South senatorial election, only 1 local government, Shaki East, has its election ready. For House of Representatives in Iseyin, Itesiwaju, Iwajo, and Kajola results are still being counted. So much for the report. Now, Prof, you've listened and watched those reports. Some issues have come up. Let's take a look at the issue of the burning that just came in from Oriade local government in Osun State. Warnings have gone out from authorities. They've talked about punishment for whoever snatched ballot box or no. Probably now they are now setting the ballot boxes on fire, thumb-printed ballot papers on fire. Should this have occurred, what could have led to such from the voters or probably party agents?
Oh, thank you, Kemi. It's so sad. It's unfortunate. It's something that should not be tolerated at all as part of our polity in Nigeria. Going to the extent of seizing ballot papers and then setting them ablaze, it's an invitation to anarchy, and that should not be tolerated. The security agents should be up and doing. They have been doing very well. They can do much more. They should put things in place. They have to be proactive. so that people do not, hoodlum do not take them unaware. They have to gather get intelligence information report from time to time, and network among themselves, because sometimes the gaps among the communication patterns among the security agencies might bring out some of this. So they have to network very well among themselves and be very proactive. Let me also add here that the task of securing electoral material is not just that of the security agencies alone. The people, the citizens have to be also involved. They should be very vigilant. Should report things that they have seen that are not going on well. There is this popular saying in Nigeria now to say, when you see something, say something. So we have to understand this, and INEC on its part has to put in place something that will discourage this kind of behavior. This means that if people do these things and they get away with that, and then these votes in these areas eventually count, then there's a problem. If things happen like that way, I think there should be a kind of action that we inherently discourage people from doing that, knowing that if we do indulge in this act, then perhaps our votes are going to be voided.
Talking about punishment, Prof. Yes. Now, the electorate, the voters themselves, should know that some things are normal, some things are abnormal. Yeah. And you've taken the patience to cast your ballot, and at the end of the day, people just come around and set them on fire. There should be this attitudinal behavior from the electorate. What have you got to say about that?
I've said it earlier on, even here on this forum, that politics and politicking should not be a do-or-die affair. It should not. It should be so natural, so simple, so seamless. And I tell everyone that cares to listen that anyone who is so intensely motivated to carry out certain political activities to the extent of going beyond the normal stipulation does not have the nation at heart. Such a person has perhaps ulterior motives, selfish interests. Those who want to serve do not impose themselves on others. Those who naturally want to serve are invited sometimes. In some clients, they're actually invited. People woo them, and they come, and they serve as servants, even at the beginning. So we should not take laws into our hands and they begin to do things that are so illegal, so terrible to the nation. Because going out to set ballot papers ablaze means that we want to twist the facts. We want to bring behind through the back door people that were not voted into power legitimately. People that just want to come in because they want to come in at all costs. And coming into governance at all costs is very dangerous, because people that come in this regard, in this circumstance, may have to first amass wealth, declare profit, political profit in court, and so on and so forth. But people who want to come naturally are coming to serve, and are going to improve the quality of lives of Nigerians. So it is seriously not supported. I do not support such an action. Okay, that still brings us to electoral malpractice during collation. You see that since yesterday, people are still waiting to get the results collated. And people would just want to stipulate that people are removing or adding, and things are going on underneath. Should this really change? Because we've really come a long way in our democratic dispensation. Yeah, I say it again that it is not a war. People have to be patient. Nigerians have to be patient. The process of sorting votes, counting them, and declaring the results is not an easy process. This is not an easy process. It takes a time. Nigeria is a vast country, different terrains, some of which are very challenging. So people have to be patient. INEC is in charge. we have been receiving praises already that INEC is doing a good job. So Nigerians should trust in the capacity of INEC to do a great job. And the INEC has been doing that so that we will diligently sort out the results, collect the results, and then announce results that will be deemed to be credible. Now, if people want to stampede INEC and stampede official, then it means that the process is not going to be, so good, and people will still complain. So we have to understand this. We also have to watch out for fake news. It's so sad that Nigeria has degenerated to the level of, trusting fake news and disseminating fake news in a way that brings about so many consequences. That is not good. Fake news has the capacity to cause deaths, has the capacity to breed enmity, has the capacity to twist information that will bring about so many things, put so many things in disarray. So I think government has been talking about dealing with people that spread fake news. And I think we should seriously do something about that. When people disseminate fake news, I think when they are fished out, they should be seriously punished for doing that. Because I think Nigerians are underestimating the negative consequences of fake news. And the consequences are very grave and very, very serious.
And of course, we have grown over that over the years. Yeah. And now let's still go back to the issue of collation from the collation centers. The results are coming in trickles.
Yeah.
Why is it taking this long? And why is it that when we have so many things already computed, when it comes to collation, it's still being done manually? What are the issues? Why should this still be the case?
Well, we are called a developing nation. So we are developing. We cannot have it completely right overnight. Some of these things that INEC is doing involve use of technology. And technology is quite dicey sometimes. And I think it is better to be a little more careful than to rush and then bring out something that is not acceptable. By the way, Nigerians waited for 1 week. We commend them for that. They waited for 1 week when the elections were postponed, and then now it's time to count. I think in the course of waiting, Nigerians should be patient. In being patient, they should also be vigilant, so that when things are not going right, people can report such incidents and they will be dealt with. But I think we should not stampede INEC, we should not stampede officials, because doing that, we open up avenues for manipulation.
Still talking about not stampeding INEC. Prof, yeah. We would like to quickly take a look at issues going around within the metropolis in Ibadan. Okay. And as we await results, Kayode Oladoshu was a popular Mokola roundabout in Ibadan. What is he doing there, and what did he bring back?
Election is no doubt a big issue in Nigeria. That is why before, during and after, it is a subject of discourse. In Oyo State, presidential and National Assembly election took place yesterday. But the issue emanating from it still lingers. At this newspaper stand in Mokola, this is probably the first time a large crowd of people will be there to discuss what happened.
About to vote yesterday, the card reader read my card, only for them to just let me know that I applied for the transfer, which they told me when I visited at the point where I did the transfer that it was not successful. But yesterday it was rather unfortunate that after the card reader has accredited me, they now said my name is not on the register. So,
well, without wasting your time, the election conducted yesterday was wonderful and historic. To me, believe it or not, it was another free, fair, and credible elections.
Nigerians await the announcement of results. People in Oyo State are here to put what happened aside. After all, Kemi, they say 9th of March is still a few days away. But the result of yesterday is what matters for now. I am Kayode Oladoshu. Back to you in the studio.
Of course, Kayode, the results really matters because we want to know the way forward from here. Now, erase up some issues that the voters were talking about, the issues that came up, the issue of transfer of the PVC so that you can vote anywhere. Why is it that we can't vote anywhere? Some people will say, okay, we have our ATMs and we can use it anywhere. Why is it that we can't just use our PVCs anywhere?
Well, it's, we are evolving. We're evolving and they will surely get there. Bear it in mind that some 20 years ago, we were not having those things that we're having in place now. So we are growing and hopefully we'll grow to a much higher level.
We kept vigil in the Collation Center
get there.
within the state office of the Independent National Electoral Commission, awaiting results from various collation centers across the...
Nigerians make use of their ATM cards anywhere. We will come to a level that, and I think INEC is taking note of all of these things. And I said it because the body, INEC should have a body, and I think that that body should be in place, a body that takes note of all the challenges that people are having, so that they can put all these things together and then work out a modality, work out ways of dealing with this issue. Because if you hear people complain about a particular problem over and over again and nothing happens about them, then we are not making progress. We can only make progress when INEC and other stakeholders take note of all these issues and then bring about solutions. In doing that, they can evaluate their strengths, they can evaluate their weaknesses, their opportunities, and the threats, what management experts and industrial psychologists call SWOT analysis. So it's as an organization, not just INEC, even the security agencies and all other agencies, we should be doing a SWOT analysis all the time. It's a continuous process. So that you evaluate your strengths, your weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. So when you look at the strengths, you are going to consolidate on them because strengths are positive. When you look at the weaknesses, you are going to correct them because they are not good. When you look at the opportunities, you are going to exploit them very well because sometimes opportunities are disguised. They appear in rags and you think they are not opportunities. So you exploit them positively. It takes a third eye for someone to exploit that. Okay, and then you look at the threats. What are the threats that are in place so that you deal with them to forestall the occurrence of certain negative events.
Now talking about curbing trends of negative events, the issue of patience, Governor Amusun of Ogun State mentioned yesterday after he cast his ballot that Nigerians should learn to be patient and exercise more patience, be more patient. What is the issue now? Are we saying that Nigerians are not that patient when it comes to issues of election and other issues in the country?
Well, there are different categories of Nigerians. So all Nigerians do not represent 1% in Nigeria. So there are different categories of Nigerians. There are some who are patient. There are some who are not patient. There are some who are in between. But the counsel here is that we should be patient at this time because taking decisions and acting in circumstances of urgency sometimes don't produce good results. Why? Because there's no critical analysis. You don't evaluate your alternatives, your options very well. So it is good to sit back very well, look at alternatives, look at certain things that are happening, so that, well, now I've said earlier on that INEC is in charge and Nigerians are commending INEC because INEC has done a good job. So why can't we at this stage be patient to allow INEC that we are commending already to do the job?
Now, as we still await more results, we have another resident in Ibadan who is also suing for peace after yesterday's election. Let's take a listen.
As result is what matters most. Taiwo Loke is here to tell us his view as he awaits the the final result?
As far as I'm concerned, we are anticipating of the results of the election that took place yesterday, and we are in prayer that the president that will make Nigeria proud, that the good betterment for the Nigerians will emerge as the president of the Nigeria as we are waiting the results very soon. I believe maybe in the next 48 hours, our expectation is that the INEC might have announced the result. I want to seize the opportunity to appeal to all citizens of our country to accept the result as it has come out.
A good Nigerian, they are suing for peace. Prof, there's so much talk about peace, and we all want peace, we all enjoy peace. What should be the connection between the electorate and the politicians, especially in accepting the results when they're finally out?
Well, peace is good for development. People work for peace, and peace is sometimes expensive, so to say, to come by. So we have to learn to be peaceful, to live in peace with one another as Nigerians. Now, peace, as I said, does not just come. We have to work towards it. And when we are working for peace in a country, for instance, we should guard against all this unguarded statement that politicians sometimes make, people make, because these appear like they cause a lot of people to be anxious and to begin to wonder what is going on. And in doing that, there is so much apprehension. And apprehension makes people to begin to behave irrationally. So we should guard what we say. Politicians we should learn to, like I say, quite a number of Nigerians are cognitively very intelligent. But many Nigerians are not cognitively, emotionally intelligent, which means that we have to mind the way we impact the emotions of others, with the things that we say, with the things that we do, especially at times like this, when elections, I know the elections are important because it is a platform, it's an avenue for us to bring leaders in place. And we know the importance of leaders and how they impact our lives. And I think that explains why some people are very apprehensive. But, of course, if leaders are coming in to serve the citizens of Nigeria genuinely, I do not think that they should be fighting and causing commotion to come in. They should come in a very peaceful manner. They should come in an organized manner. They should come in a way that is accepted by all and sundry. So, peace is very important, and having peace does not mean that people don't disagree. In fact, disagreeing with one another is part of our growth as human beings. We are not saying that we should not disagree, but we should disagree in a very mature way, in a way that allows others to voice out their concerns, and then you listen to them.
And for us to achieve good results. Now, what do we now do? What should people, should be their reaction when the results are finally out? On the final
Collation center within the...
Good enough. INEC has been commended. Now, if you commend a person for a task, and let's hope and let's believe also that INEC will do a great job to the end, and that people will commend INEC to the end. Now, when you commend someone for doing something, and then the person now gives you a result of that which you commended him for, and then you eventually say, no, I don't accept this result, then that's contradictory. So, in a way, Nigerians are commending INEC. Invariably, they say you are doing a great job. We are instrumentally accepting the result that you are giving us until you get to the end. The advice here is that
the people should also finally embrace
continue in this trend
results
by maintaining that integrity, particularly I cherish the INEC's way of communicating with people adequately, that daily briefing that the chairman brought up. And I must commend the media also in this respect, because they have been trying to disseminate and educate information and educate people. The media have been doing very well. I commend NTA, for instance, with a wide reach, wide network. They are doing very well, and I think you are partners in progress. And by what we are doing, people will be touched. People will be informed.
Thank you,
so
Prof.
Thank
you very much, Professor, for the commendations on INEC and the media at the same time. Fisayo, that's what we have here in Ibadan, and we'll go back to you in Abuja so that you can continue to enjoy more cups of coffee while we go back to our plates of amala. Thank you.
I thought you were going to send some over the wire, but I'll make do with that. Thank you very much, Kemi. It's been Kemi from Ibadan Network Center, the pay setter they're called out there. Let me quickly welcome from the Department of International Relations and Diplomacy-based University, Dr. Mukhtar Imam. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, Bola Bakari is the president, Truth Be Told Network. Thank you for joining us.
I'm glad.
Let me, as I welcome you guys, let me also allow Dr. Adeniyi to give us his last comments, especially on the issue of trusting the umpire.
Yeah, it's very important to say finally, Fishayo, that in any contest, the umpire, it's usually a detached person. It's the person that's supposed to be neutral, to maintain a stage where no interest group will want to see him or her as being partial, But it's also important to say again that there's no umpire that goes without being criticized, Umpires are usually badgered down, they're usually harassed, But the important thing for the umpire to do is to keep their eyes on the ball, to remain focused, and be seen to be above board at the end of the day, like Sister's wife. Okay? And even if interest groups are attacking them, it doesn't matter. We are in a multi-sectoral system. There are so many stakeholders in the system. It's not just the political parties that are involved. Okay, the national, international observers are there, the media is there, the civil society is there. We are all watching, and the citizens are also there. If they are able to give us a free, fair, credible, and transparent election, we can all see through it and help them identify whether or not they've done a good job. They should keep their eyes on the ball and deliver the goods for us. And it's also important, finally and conclusively again, that the contestants, need to understand that there's no point being die-hearted about elections. It's either you win or lose. Okay, they need to be magnanimous in victory and gallant in defeat. We need to move forward in our democracy. We made some gains in 2015. All we need to do this time around is to consolidate on it. There shouldn't be any reason for stress, please.
All right, that has been Dr. Abiodun Adeniyi. Let me... we understand that Bini is getting ready before I let my new guests come in. Doctor, thank you for being a part of this Nigeria Decides studio. You have given us a lot from your wealth of experience. Bini is standing by. I understand Agatha Egware Ojo is getting ready for us. Agatha, what are you here?
Fisayo Oyese. Honestly, I was thinking you were going to ask me if you want some pounded yam and egusi soup or black soup and starch. But anyhow, we always have them here for you. But thank you so much for joining us in Benin. Of course, we have our guest in the house, Dean, Faculty of Arts and Orator of the University of Benin, Professor Eddie Eragbe. You're welcome, sir.
Yeah, good morning, Nigeria, and good morning, great people of the world that are listening to us.
All right, let's go straight now. From what we saw yesterday, and I'm sure from feelers you've gotten so far, can you appraise the exercise?
I would say that from Benin here, that is Edo State, and of course the adjoining states of Delta, Ondo, and others close by here, we did relatively well compared to the reports we're getting from other parts of the country. And that, of course, from our analysis yesterday, which said that we almost could be recommending the Edo model of performance because, yes, in certain areas there were delays in the the voting exercise, but all those initial delays were virtually rectified. And by and large, we believe that the elections went peacefully in this area. And yes, there were also pockets of complaints where, as we said yesterday, some materials were not commensurate in terms of the number of those that are registered and the ballots that were expected. But looking at it and the major stakeholders and participants in the exercise, INEC, with all the logistic problems they had, would say they delivered fairly well. The security operatives in our area here, that's in Edo and the adjoining areas, they did fairly well also. And then the electorate, members of the electorate, they showed great comportment. They showed resilience and determination to the extent that even when materials did not come early enough, there were those that were resolute that they had to wait. And as we are saying, we thank God that in these areas, we didn't really have major incidents of violence such that has characterized the voting in certain places where lives have been lost, which of course is very, very painful for us as Nigerians, because it has been almost a clarion call on all Nigerians that there is no life that should be lost in the process of just trying to cast our votes. But behold, as we have seen, it's very unfortunate that while people later will be sworn in as president, governors, members of various legislative houses, some families will now be mourning. They are breadwinners, they are loved ones, even in certain cases, youths with great promise and hope for the future have been sacrificed in the process of these elections. That, of course, is very, very unfortunate.
All right, Professor. Yeah. I guess we'll come to the violence issue later.
Yeah.
But you rightly mentioned delays in commencement of voting in parts of Benin City.
Yeah.
What do you think can be done in future elections to correct all of that? Mind you, we also had issues where ballot papers in some areas were lesser than the number of people there.
Yeah.
What do you think INEC can do to address this?
I think for us, part of why we have been a little bit sad is that these have turned out to be recurring issues. And we as historians, which is of course my main area of specialization, always believe that one of the great things about the past, and that is if you study it, is that you can use it to make sure that you don't repeat the same mistakes. And so one would have thought that over time, we have known that there's always problem of transportation of those that are carrying materials. Because there is this centralization that makes it that items are distributed and given to those that are supposed to take them to various areas. And when the transportation sometimes is not there, the people that are carrying these sensitive materials, even non-sensitive materials, are stranded. And that is part of the problem. Because some of the pictures we saw yesterday, why the place such as UBTH, the polling center there, the materials did not get there early. They later went to the places where the materials were disputed and discovered that people were having logistic problems of movement. That definitely should not be happening at this time and age. Because we know the number of polling units, we know the various areas where materials must be moved to. So if adequate arrangements are made prior to that, unless there is element of sabotage, then we should not experience this anymore. Yeah. Then even at the national level, we're hearing of materials being taken to wrong states. It shows a high level of tardiness, which shouldn't be the case, because these are serious business things. I know that part of the crisis we are having is that of confidence. We don't trust ourselves. So, and to that extent, there is a tendency to retain materials for times which are not so reasonable. So, an election that's supposed to commence at about 8 o'clock, you start asking people to move at about 6 or even later than that. And that is a problem that I believe that in the future, we should work to make sure that those that are taking materials out move early with them. And then if you are looking at the number of ballot papers, for example, that will be required, it shouldn't be rocket science. You have the number of people registered. Then you know the booklets that are contained there. You know what is the content of each booklet. I was a dean of students, University of Benin, and I conducted elections there. We are not saying we're perfect, But at the time, I even got a tag, which was now, I was known as, the name now is not coming up quickly, but Unbiased Dean. Unbiased Dean came as a result of the fact that previously, maybe you want to conduct elections, they say materials are not enough. And we made sure that we knew the number of students that were going to vote. We made sure that those papers were there. We also made sure that every person that was qualified, who was present, was given the opportunity to vote. Yeah. When you do these things, you tend to reduce the tension and the frustrations that people go through.
Okay, Prof, yeah. I'm sure the future you're talking about is March 9.
Yeah, exactly, because it's not so far from now. Yeah. And they even know, we are aware now that in certain areas they are going to do some by-elections quickly because they were inconclusive, as they are saying. So these kinds of things, from what we were saying, let there be connection between the past, the present, and the planning for the future. Let it not be like every time we are just new about it, that whatever we are doing. Even the issues you say we'll come to later, that is security, is that if you have been protecting a house, you know what you need to do. You cannot just relax. You must be proactive enough. Unfortunately, from what we have seen now, what is even happening in some states from the reports that Fisayo and others were presenting, maybe the reports from Osun and all, is that would it really be that with all the tensions and what has been happening in other parts of the country, that security will be relaxed to such, be lax to such an extent that hoodlums will just, is it that they overpower the security personnel? So what I'm trying to say here is that as a country, the democracy we are now working on, we are celebrating 20 years of uninterrupted democratic practice. That is 1999 to 2019. And rather than looking at we are improving in all directions, in certain areas we are trying, but in others we are getting retrogressive. That, I believe, should not be the case with us.
All right. I'm just wondering, all of these challenges here and there, did you notice some improvement or specific improvements?
Yeah, like I mentioned yesterday, and I think we also have had reports along that line. You find that the card readers, they tended to function better. And apart from functioning better, when there was the need for replacement, it was fast. And to that extent, in major areas, the car reader issue, there was a level of improvement. And also, I reported yesterday, that is from my own direct participation in the elections that took place in my area, instead of having people coming to crowd an electoral officer by way of checking for names and all, and wasting time that tends to get people impatient, the people were proactive and creative enough to display, because you have about, I think I had about 3 copies of the list. So there is the one that you can just go display where the people can go to, check for their numbers, check for the pages, which is what I did. And so in less than 2-3 minutes, I just got there. Oh, my number is 777, page 78. And the man went there and we were able to get it right away. Yeah. And that definitely helped to hasten the situation, that is to fasten the situation and the conduct of the election yesterday. So that is something that we could also work on, so to speak. And then, in this election this year, I would say that there was greater involvement of the civil society in terms of mobilization. But for them, I would say that the government agencies that were even expected to mobilize the people, sensitize the people on how to vote and most of those things, they seem not to have had the capacity to do that. And so it had now devolved down to different civil society bodies, certain professional bodies that now were organizing workshops, seminars, going on public demonstrations to really tell the people what has to be done. Because you find that it was just about the evening of the election that some of the stations, media houses, were trying to tell Nigerians, this is how you fold the ballot, so that you don't, because of the size and also that you have enough space. That definitely should have been done earlier. But be that as it may, from what I am saying, the high level of involvement of civil society organizations and professional bodies in getting Nigerians mobilized is quite commendable. We also must not forget that it was the same civil society groups and others that started saying, vote and not fight, and all of that, trying to tell the people that no life should be lost in the process. Unfortunately, of course, we know that no matter how you try, just like the preachers, about conversion. There are those that are diehard. But I always say that we should appreciate that it could have been worse, but for some of these positive developments that have occurred in the process of preparing for these elections.
Okay, thank God we have an improvement now. Prof, I'll get back to you.
Okay.
But let's take this report from...
They are very clear. This place, Gosa Grammar School, is a collation center for the